Chapter 651. Right then, Xiao Chua's aura was way too aggressive. His whole body was emitting an aura that made people's hearts skip a beat. That aura was like an army charging out, and even ghosts and gods would have to back out. I did not expect Xiao Chuha to be this powerful after being angered. He is completely different from before. Bai Ming Hui is indeed powerful as well. He managed to wound Xiao Chua first. I wonder if he still has the power to battle after this. Everyone was shocked by Xiao Chua's aura, and they started to discuss quietly. That blade attack that Xiao Chua had thrown out was unbelievably powerful, and the remaining power had been pressing on Bai Ming Hui the whole time, bringing his body to shoot out like crazy. It tore open a few miles long gully on the surface of the lake. When the last bit of power was about to run out, the remaining blade, Qi, continued to attack on Bai Ming Hui's defensive armor. It seemed like it would not stop until the armor was broken. Bai Ming Hui had not stopped puking out blood at all. Seeing that the remaining blade Qi was still so powerful, he yelled and shook his body. That rich Zhen Yuan shattered the blade Qi, and the remaining waves spread out in a spherical shape. One could see with naked eyes that there was a huge dent in the lake's surface. Wah! After doing all that, Bai Ming Hui puked out another mouthful of blood. The spot that had been hit by the blade Qi had gone completely numb, losing all connection with the rest of his body. Xiao Chua won. Yi Chun, who was sitting on top of the mountain, shook his head. Bai Ming Hui did not have the power to battle anymore. Xiao Chua's ocean-splitting three-blade had the power to break the ocean, and the blade power was extremely condensed. Even with the defensive armor, it had already cut through some of the meridians in Bai Ming Hui's chest. Top 5 young warriors. None of them are easy to deal with. Besides the godly shark princess, who he did not know much about, Yi Chen had always thought that Xiao Chuha would be the weakest one among the top 5 young warriors. But now, it seemed like even if Xiao Chuha was not as powerful as Bai Wuxue, he would definitely not be weaker than Xia Hozun. The battle between him and Lu Xiaoyu might be a tough one. Taking a deep breath, Bai Ming Hui's pupil shrunk as he stared at Xiao Chuha. His opponent's power was beyond his imagination. To be honest, he had never thought of Xiao Chuha as a threat. He was more afraid of Bai Wuxue and Xia Hozun, since one of them was extremely well-rounded and flawless, while the other was extremely powerful in both offense and defense. Besides these two, Bai Ming Hui was not even afraid of Lu Xiaoyu, since Yi Chun was also a sword artist. He would beat the two sooner or later. However, the reality had slapped him hard in the face. Xiao Chuha, who he had been treating the least, had exploded with a battling power that he had never seen before. Although his Sky Bank second movement was extremely powerful, he had not expected that Xiao Chuha would be able to cut through 4 of the silver light beams and only be hit on the shoulder by the last one. Obviously, one silver light beam would only cause some internal injuries to Xiao Chuha, and it would not even be a serious wound. After all, the top 5 young warriors' defense would not be this weak. It would take more than 2 silver light beams to make them lose their battling power completely. Damn, I was so close. Blue veins popped out on Bai Ming Hui's forehead. If he could go back in time, he would definitely not underestimate Xiao Chuha. He would use his power that was way beyond his limit to fight with him, and only use the second movement when he was absolutely sure. He was sure that if he had another chance, Xiao Chuha would not be able to cut through 4 of those silver light beams at once. It would already be impressive if he could cut through 3 of them. Unfortunately, there was no such thing as a medicine for regret. Yi Chen did not know what Bai Ming Hui was thinking, and even if he did, he would only shake his head. The reason why Xiao Chuha was able to beat Bai Ming Hui was because of his real power, which was something that could not be faked. Therefore, even if they were to fight again, Bai Ming Hui would still lose. My biggest mistake was underestimating you, Bai Ming Hui said. Xiao Chuha said lightly, "It is not that you underestimated me, but you overestimated yourself. I think you are not the only one who overestimated yourself." In his opinion, Bai Ming Hui, Sidu Hao, and Yi Chun had all overestimated themselves. All right, I have lost this time. I have nothing else to say. In front of this many people, no matter how thick Bai Ming Hui's skin was, he could only admit his defeat. As he spoke, his toes touched the surface of a lake, and his body flew into the air, landing on a huge tree right next to the Nine-Dragon Lake. After swallowing a pellet, he sat down with his legs crossed. In the middle of the lake, Xiao Chuha glanced at Yi Chun before turning around and flying back to his seat. Bai Minghui lost. The top 5 young warriors are indeed the top 5 young warriors. I am afraid that will not change in the next year. Yi Chun and Bai Minghui's power is still a bit lacking after all. It was not until Bai Minghui admitted it himself that everyone knew the result of the battle. I wonder what kind of level Dugaju has reached right now. Someone said suddenly, "Tomorrow is the day of the battle. We will know by then." On top of a small hill, Li Daoxian, Yin Qihua, and the other two had been watching the battle. Yin Qihua had never seen a powerful blade artist like Xiao Chua before. Compared to him, those blade artists from the Fire Spirit Palace were like babies who had not learned how to walk yet, and he himself was only learning how to walk. The huge gap had made his blade artist heart even more determined. One day, he would beat a powerful blade artist like this and stand on top of all the other blade artists. Li Daoxian was waiting for Lu Xiaoyu's arrival. The fact that Xiao Chuha had lost to Lu Xiaoyu was known by a lot of people. Therefore, he really wanted to know how powerful Lu Xiaoyu's sword art was and how it would compare with Yi Chen's. I really hope these two can have a battle. This thought suddenly flashed through Li Daoxuan's mind. He then forced a laugh, thinking that it would not be possible. Yi Chen's opponent was Dugaju, and if it were Lu Xiaoyu, it would still be a bit of stretch, since the latter was a top sword master who had beaten Xiao Chua before. On the ranking, besides the old monster sword artist who was ranked second, Lu Xiaoyu would be the leader. Soon, the 4th day had passed. On the morning of the 5th day, today was the day of the battle. The sun had not completely risen yet, but the air-slicing noises from all directions suddenly became more intense. Most of the people who had arrived were the ones who were a bit further away from the Nine-Dragon Mountain, or those who were a bit slower. Among them were some of the most eye-catching people, such as the head of the top 3 blade artists, Xie Baiting, and a white-haired elder right next to him, along with other master-level warriors. The white-haired elder who had come with Xie Baiting was not some random warrior, but an old monster sword artist who was ranked second in the ranking. He was called Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master, and he was at least 150 years old. One was a blade artist ranked 5th, while the other was a sword artist ranked 2nd. The arrival of the two would definitely attract a lot of attention. Brother Xie, since you're praising this battle so much, I'm starting to get excited. I want to watch it. Su Yuan chuckled. Xie Baiting said, "Brother Su, you will not be disappointed. All right, since Brother Xie has said so, then I will definitely not be disappointed." Su Yuan was very clear about Xie Baiting's eyesight. He did not come a year ago because with his status, there was no need for him to come. But this time, it was because Xie Baiting had told him that the battle between Lu Xiaoyu and Xiao Chuha would be at the same level as the battle between them. There would not be too much of a gap between them anymore. As for the battle between Yi Chun and Dugaju, to be honest, they did not care too much about it. Even the top martial geniuses needed time to grow. Therefore, this battle would be centered around Lu Xiaoyu and Xiao Chua, while Yi Chun and Dugaju would just be the side dishes. Many people recognized the identity of Su Yuan from the Earth Sword sect, and all of them secretly rejoiced. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword sect had not appeared in front of the public for many years, and he was truly an old monster. It was said that his sword skills had long reached an unimaginable level. Of course, Xie Baiting's status was not any weaker than Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Martial School. Although his ranking was lower than Su Yuan's, the Master-level warrior ranking was only for reference, and it had a certain degree of accuracy. If they were to really fight, it would be hard to tell who would be the stronger one. The reason why Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Martial School had stolen his thunder was because Xie Baiting had appeared in front of the crowd more times than Su Yuan, so people had gotten used to it. The morning fog had disappeared completely, and the sun had risen to 1/3 of the sky. People with good eyesight could see that there was a beam of white light flashing in the horizon. Each time it flashed, the distance between them would decrease a lot, as if it was teleporting. Soon, the white light turned into a human figure. It was Lu Xiaoyu. Lu Xiaoyu is finally here. I can't wait. Since Lu Xiaoyu is here first, then his battle with Xiao Chuhe will definitely happen first. Actually, I want to see the battle between Yi Chun and Dugaju first. Otherwise, once Lu Xiaoyu and Xiao Chuhe's battle is over, my interest would definitely decrease by half. It was like when one was used to eating good food and suddenly eating something inferior, it would definitely be boring. But eating the inferior food first and then eating the better food would definitely make the enjoyment longer. Lu Xiaoyu was like a white light dragon as he arrived above the Nine-Dragon Lake within a second. That sharp aura seemed to have cooled down the whole place. What a sword artist! Su Yuan's eyes brightened. At his level, he only needed to sense the other's aura to know his cultivation level. Without a doubt, Lu Xiaoyu had piqued his interest. Lu Xiaoyu. Xiao Chuhe stood up, his blade intent aura clashing with Lu Xiaoyu's sword intent aura. The sky above the Nine-Dragon Lake seemed to have changed as countless blade lights and sword shadows appeared. Some of the weaker people suddenly felt a chill all over their bodies. Goosebumps appeared all over their bodies, and their hair stood on end. This included Li Daoxian and Yan Qihua. One of them was a swordsman and the other a bladesman, so they felt it more deeply than the others. It seems like the two of us will have to battle first. Oh well, let's get it over with and leave as soon as possible. Lu Xiaoyu did not have much interest in watching the battle between Yi Chun and Dugaju, especially when he was waiting. That is exactly what I was thinking. The other battles are just secondary to me. Xiao Chuhe's wounds had already recovered. As long as it was not a serious injury, it would not be a problem for him to recover in one night. Let's fight. Lu Xiaoyu's breathing was steady as his eyes started to sharpen. Stretching his body, Xiao Chuhe was about to fly out when he suddenly made a noise. He looked into the distance and saw a beam of gray light. It is Dugaju. Dugaju is finally here. Someone yelled out. The gray light flew over an extremely shocking speed. When it was close to the Nine-Dragon Lake, it let go of its protective Zhen Yuan layer and flashed once before appearing in the middle of the lake. Without looking at the others, Dugaju, whose eyes had turned gray, found Yi Chun and looked at him. Sitting on top of the mountain, Yi Chun put away the defensive sword spell manual and lifted his eyes, looking over with an amorous expression. When he sensed her aura, he was a bit surprised and started to think. Who? All of a sudden, a horrifying chi burst out of Duguju's body. That despairing blade intent pressed down on Yi Chun, who was on the mountain. Under that horrifying blade intent, the people who were standing close to it felt like they had arrived at hell. That despairing emotion started to grow on their faces. Such a horrifying blade intent. Yi Chun did not move, but Xie Baiting did. He released his own blade intent, which clashed with Duguju's despairing blade intent. What shocked Xie Baiting the most was that the second his blade intent touched Duguju's blade intent, he felt like there was a surreal Duguju attacking him with his blade. That despairing blade light filled the air, reflecting in his eyes and making his breathing speed up. Horrifying. Horrifying. Yi Chun will lose for sure. Xie Baiting's body shook as he let go of his blade intent. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Chapter 652. Although the others did not feel it as deeply as Xie Baiting did, they could all see the change in Dugaju. Right then, Dugaju gave people the feeling of a killer from hell. As he walked, that despairing chi covered the whole world, and that horrifying blade intent could even scare ghosts and gods. Interesting. Xiao Chuhe's long blade bounced up and down as an interested expression appeared on his face. Duguju's power was indeed out of his expectation. But of course, it was only out of his expectation. As a master-level blade artist, blade intent alone would not be enough to make him change his expression. Let's see your battle with Yi Chun first. I hope Yi Chun can last a couple of attacks. As his body relaxed, Xiao Chuhe knew that his battle with Lu Xiaoyu would have to be delayed. Lu Xiaoyu looked at Duguju with a bit of surprise as he thought to himself, with only blade intent, Duguju is already at the forefront. I wonder how powerful he really is? With a powerful blade intent, One's own power would not be weak. But it cannot be the only thing to measure one's power. The power was all about the warrior's overall performance. Besides the most important things like cultivation, willpower, profound sense, and other things that could be improved through training, it would also require battle experience and talent. Shoo! A white light flashed once as Lu Xiaoyu flew to the lakeside. Facing such a negative blade intent, Yichen did not change his expression as he said, "Dugu Ju, if you want to use your blade intent to threaten me, I am afraid you will be very disappointed." Indeed, Dugu Ju put away his despairing blade intent. Among all of the young martial geniuses on this true spirit continent, perhaps only Yichen was someone that he could not see through. He had already guessed this result, but no matter what, he had to give it a try. Only after trying would he be able to make a decision. How could there be such a horrifying blade intent? It almost made me lose control of my mind. Me too. All of the people who were watching the battle had pale faces as they looked at Dugu Ju with fear. This guy is indeed a top martial genius. Once he reaches the life and death realm, he will be a very horrifying king warrior. Perhaps he will become the second evil king. Su Yuan praised. Xie Baiting said, if he can reach the life and death realm, he will not be any weaker than Evil King. I think he will walk on another path. Evil King had reached the life and death realm 50 years ago and was also a famous martial genius. If it were not for Xianhou, then he would be the #1 martial genius of this continent in 1,000 years. Yeah, Su Yuan nodded and continued to say, the little girl from the Dantai family is also known as a top martial genius. I wonder if this Yi Chen's title is true or not. Indeed, Yi Chen's speed of increasing his cultivation could be considered as a top martial genius. But it was still not as impressive as Dugu Ju and Dantai Mingwei. The former two had been showing off their top martial geniuses since they were young, and had never disappointed anyone. Therefore, being a top martial genius was both an honor and a pressure. Su Yuan did not have high hopes for Yi Chen, since it was not easy to reach the level of a top martial genius. Maintaining it for a short period of time was nothing, but maintaining it for a long period of time would be truly horrifying. Dugu Ju and Dantai Mingwei had already been through it. I am afraid that Yi Chen will lose. Dugu Ju's change had shocked Xie Baiting. Originally, he was quite optimistic about Yi Chen, since Yi Chen was from a small South Ritter region, which was a very low starting point. Therefore, it was even more valuable. However, Dugu Ju was still able to explode with a huge amount of power, even though he was not as powerful as the others. This was what it meant to be a top martial genius. Top martial geniuses would always be able to do the impossible. Let's postpone our battle for a bit. Unexpectedly, Dugu Ju did not start the battle with Yi Chen right away. Meanwhile, Yi Chen acted like it was natural, as if he had already known about it. Turning around, Dugu Ju looked at Xiao Chuha. Xiao Chuha, you and I are both blade artists. Among the blade artists, there can only be one #1. Therefore, you will lose under my blade for sure. As he spoke, he then said to Yi Chen, I will fight with you as the #1 blade artist. I hope you will not disappoint me. The others had taken the top 5 young warriors as their targets, but Dugu Ju had taken Yi Chen as his lifetime rival. Only Yi Chen could threaten him. The others were only temporary. Once Dugu Ju said that, everyone was shocked. Was it arrogance, or was it confidence in his power? Without a doubt, compared to Dugu Ju, even Bai Minghui was not as powerful. Before his battle with Xiao Chuha, although Bai Minghui sounded a bit arrogant, it still gave everyone the feeling that he was afraid of Xiao Chuha. But now that Dugu Ju had said it, it was as if he was even more powerful than Xiao Chuha. You are too arrogant. Xiao Chuha obviously did not expect that Dugu Ju would challenge him first. But it was not important. What was important was that the latter's tone had completely pissed him off. He was one of the top 5 young warriors, and he had been through hundreds of battles. It was the first time he had been treated as someone who could be easily killed. All right, I will wait for you. Yi Chen's reply was very normal, without any arrogance. But it still made a lot of people look at each other. Dugu Ju had said that Xiao Chuha would definitely lose under his blade, and Yi Chen had said that he would wait for Dugu Ju. Even an idiot could tell that Yi Chun was implying that after he beat Xiao Chuha, Yi Chun would wait for Dugu to battle with him. Obviously, beating Xiao Chuha would not surprise Yi Chun at all. Xiao Chuha had already shown his horrifying power before, and if Dugu could beat Xiao Chuha, then Yi Chun would definitely know how horrifying Dugu was. Under such circumstances, he still dared to say that he would wait for him, which made a lot of people suspicious. Arrogant, Lu Xiaoyu said with a low voice. No one knew if he was talking about Dugu or Yi Chun. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master frowned as he forced a smile and said to Xie Baiting, young people nowadays do not know how to be humble anymore. See, things will come to an end eventually. Xie Baiting touched the handle of his blade. Under the stares of a lot of people, Yi Chun lowered his head, looking very calm. Of course, he would not say those words out of arrogance. To be honest, if Dugu could not beat Xiao Chuha, then he would not have the power to fight with him at all. Chin, taking out his long blade, the tip of the blade pointed at Xiao Chuha as Dugu yelled, "Let's fight." Shoo! Xiao Chuha's feet stomped on the ground. Unlike an exploding wave, he arrived above the Nine-Dragon Lake within a second, right in front of Dugu. Bai Minghui had said this to me before, but he had lost. I will still say the same thing. If you want to challenge us, you are still too early. Suppressing his anger, Xiao Chuha said with a low voice, whether I am early or not, you will find out soon enough. All right then, I would like to see what kind of power you have. In the battle with Bai Minghui, Xiao Chuha had waited until the end of the battle to finish the battle. But right now, that horrifying aura of an army was coming out of Xiao Chuha's body, and his eyes started to turn red. A lot of people knew that Xiao Chuha had been pissed off, and he would use all of his power right from the start. Very good. Dugu nodded satisfactorily. Lose. That long blade with a white light was taken out of its scabbard as Xiao Chuha held the blade with both of his hands. He threw out an attack from the sky, and that white blade light increased by hundreds of times, looking like a sky blade. The surface of the lake could not handle that powerful blade pressure, and a straight line was formed. All of the lake water within that line was turned into mist. Dang! With a wave of his long blade, that incoming blade light was blown away, while Dugu himself did not move an inch. He said lightly, Xiao Chuha, since I have the confidence to beat you, then I naturally have my reasons. This blade attack is too weak. Bring out all of your power. Gasp! The sound of people gasping was heard one after another. Although that blade attack from Xiao Chuha was not a killing attack, it was extremely fast in that split second. Since that blade attack from Dugu was not a killing attack as well, it was obvious that Dugu had the upper hand in the first attack. Awoo! Xiao Chuha yelled as his body carried that extremely sharp blade light as he shot out, throwing out 49 blade attacks toward Dugu. Each blade attack contained a blade aura that could split the ocean. With his power as one of the top 5 young warriors, if it were someone else, they would have been scared before the battle had even started. Unfortunately, his opponent was Dugu. Squinting his eyes slightly, the long blade in Dugu's hand shot out a white-colored blade light. Within that blade light, the images of all living beings appeared on it. That despairing chi spread out everywhere. Different from before, this despairing chi did not only affect one's mental state, but also affected Dugu's body. In that kind of despair, Dugu's power became even more powerful. Some of them would lose their will to fight in that despair and become like the Walking Dead. But some of them would explode with power that they had never seen before. Even if it was just a normal blade attack, it would have the power to kill everything in its path. With the despairing blade intent, Dugu had been in closed-up training for half a year in the Evil Demon Cave, so he had learned more about the power of despair. Not only did he need to make his enemies feel despair, he also needed to make himself feel the threat of despair. Only by being under the threat of despair all the time would he be able to perform his despairing blade intent to its limit. Dang! 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 Countless blade lights clashed together, and the battle between Dugu and Xiao Chuha reached its climax. The battle between the two was extremely dangerous. One could only see the blade light flying everywhere, and the white light shining everywhere. It was impossible to see the two's figures clearly, as if they had already been merged by the blade light. Using the despairing blade intent as the path of the blade art, Yichen studied the battle and thought to himself. Everyone was walking on a different path. Some people would use the sword as a weapon, which was actually no different from a normal warrior, while some would use the sword art to learn the profound. There would be a small group of people who had the attributed sword intent who would use it as their main path, such as the Double Sword King, the Iron Sword King, and even the Battle King. Most of their martial arts were created with the attributed sword intent as the core. For example, the Double Sword King had the Slaughter Sword intent. Although his martial arts were no different from the others and contained the same profound, people would be able to sense the killing aura in his martial arts. They were created purely for killing and contained their own characteristics. Since Yi Chun had inherited their attributed sword intent, he could not be more familiar with it. However, Yi Chun was different from all of them. He was walking on the pure sword art, and the so-called profound and sword intent were all for the sword in his hand. Of course, the sword in his hand did not refer to a specific sword, but rather his sword artist's heart. As long as the sword artist's heart did not die, he would not stop moving forward. He would use the sword in his hand to break through all the obstacles. He gradually realized that the sword intent was derived from the sword, or it could be said that it was derived from the heart of a swordsman. Without the sword, without the heart of a swordsman, it was impossible to derive the sword intent. The source of the sword intent was oneself, the sword. What he wanted to walk on was the pure sword principle, the upright sword principle, which would not change. Chapter 653. The power that came out of desperation was just way too powerful. Even though Xiao Chuha had already used all of his power and was even slightly more powerful than before, he still could not get the upper hand at all. He was completely suppressed by Du Gujue and had to back out 3,000 meters, his blade art starting to get messed up. Damn! Xiao Chuha was furious. Both of his eyes were bloodshot as his whole body used the power of that long blade attack to jump back into the air, throwing out a blade attack at Duguju in front of him. You have been covered by despair. There is nowhere to run. Duguju looked cold as his gray pupils shone with an emotionless light. Xiao Chua's figure was reflected in his eyes, almost drowned by the gray background. Dang! Lifting up his right arm, he threw out another blade attack. Xiao Chuha backed out hundreds of meters again, and the clothes on his body had been torn apart, revealing the defensive armor underneath. The despairing blade art is indeed powerful. Although Yi Chun had not chosen the path of developing his sword art based on the attributed sword intent, he did not deny it either. There was an advantage to using the despairing blade intent as the path, which was that the initial growth would be extremely fast. His power would increase exponentially, and the higher his understanding of despair, the more power he would be able to explode. Plus, because of the despairing aura, all of the blade attacks created would have the despairing element, which would be extremely coordinated. It would be able to bring out all of the power within the despair. Meanwhile, Yi Chen's sword art was very inclusive. It was calm and peaceful, and its growth was neither fast nor slow. However, it was very stable and could be controlled 100%. Therefore, it was still too early to talk about which path would be better. But one thing was for sure. Yi Chun had not chosen the path of the Battle King or the Iron Sword King. As for the Dual Sword King, it was even more impossible, since he had chosen his own sword art. Dang! 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 Bright sparks exploded in the air like bright fireworks. Wherever Duguju went, Xiao Chuha would back out. Right then, most of the people could tell that Xiao Chuha had been completely suppressed, and the chance of him turning the situation around would be very slim. Among the people watching the battle, one of them shook his head and sighed. It is not that Xiao Chuha is weak, it is that Duguju is too powerful. Compared to 1 year ago, his power has increased by at least a couple of times, while Xiao Chua's improvement is not more than 30%. Therefore, Xiao Chuha will lose for sure. The top 5 young warriors are finally going to change. Duguju is indeed a top martial genius. Even Xiao Chuha would have to make way for him. When a veteran powerhouse meets a new monster, the new monster will always be stronger. Before coming here, no one would have thought that Duguju would be able to beat Xiao Chuha and become the first one to make it to the top. They all thought that even if it was a top martial genius, it would still take time to grow, and they thought that within 1 or 2 years, it would still be the top 5 young warriors. Unfortunately, they had forgotten that the reason why the top martial geniuses were top martial geniuses was not something that could be predicted with common sense. Plus, when the top martial geniuses met their opponents, they would explode with even more power. And for Duguju, Yi Chun was without a doubt his catalyst. Of course, there were still people who thought highly of Xiao Chuha. One of them said, "Don't forget that Xiao Chuha still has his ace attack, the ocean-splitting 3-blade attack. Even if Baiming Hui loses to that attack, Duguju might not be able to handle it." Yeah, Xiao Chuha's ocean-splitting 3-blade attack might be able to beat Duguju. People who supported Duguju argued back, "Don't you forget that Duguju still has his despair blade. 1 year ago, he could not control it completely. What about now? Just wait and see." Boom! The surface of a 9-dragon lake had been shattered by the battle between the 2 top blade masters. Ocean-splitting 3-blade attack. Finally, Xiao Chuha performed his ace attack. His whole body stepped on the wave, looking down from above as he threw out 3 blade attacks toward Duguju. The 3 massive blade lights stacked on top of each other, bringing about a drastic change in the weather of the 9-dragon mountain. The wind started to howl, and the undercurrent started to rise. "You have the right to make me perform my despair blade attack." The despairing chi on Duguju's body suddenly increased by a couple of times as a cold wind spread out. Meanwhile, his hair had turned gray as well. In the depth of his left eye, a white flame was burning. Whoever was stared at by that, I would feel like they had arrived at hell, where countless evil spirits appeared out of nowhere and attacked their souls. Shoo! The space in front of him started to blur, and Duguju's body disappeared from where he was standing. Crack! The blade light that Xiao Chuha had thrown out shattered like a bubble. Soon, a ghost-like shadow appeared in front of Xiao Chuha and threw out a blade attack. Without any suspense, under Duguju's despair blade attack, all Xiao Chuha had to face was despair. His protective Zhenyuan was no tougher than a piece of tofu, and it had been sliced in half. The next second, that cold blade power traveled through his armor and into his body before coming out from his back. That invisible blade pressure had sunk a blade mark into the lake surface behind him. Pooh! A huge amount of blood spurted out of Xiao Chua's mouth, forming a blood column. He had wanted to dodge, but his body was not listening to him. It seemed like he did not want to lose to Duguju, so he somehow managed to bring out a new power from his despair, wanting to throw out a blade attack at Duguju, who was right in front of him. Unfortunately, Duguju was even faster than him. Another blade attack landed on his body, blowing him into the lake and making him flip a couple of times. He had completely lost his fighting power and fighting spirit, drawing power from despair. "You will never be able to compete with me." If it were someone else, Xiao Chuha might have been able to turn the situation around. But unfortunately, it was Duguju who would not be able to do that because his understanding of despair was way beyond people's imagination. Therefore, Xiao Chua's last move was just like a trapped beast trying to fight back. Xiao Chuha lost. Xiao Chuha really lost. It has been almost 5 years, right? After 5 years, a top young warrior has finally fallen. Although they had already thought that Xiao Chuha would lose when the result came out, most of them were still shocked. Even someone as powerful as Xiao Chuha had lost to Duguju's blade. It was not hard to imagine how powerful Duguju was. Perhaps no one under 40 years old could beat Duguju. Even Bai Wuxue might not be able to do it. So powerful. Bai Minghui dared to challenge Xiao Chuha, but he realized that he would rather challenge someone else than Duguju. Drawing power from despair and making his opponent fall into despair, even if it were someone with the same power as Duguju, 99% of the time, they would lose. Sick. Sidohao was also very scared of Duguju. Making his opponent lose the chance to turn the situation around would make one's scalp go numb. Brother Xie, how confident are you in battling him? Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master suddenly asked Xie Baiting. Xie Baiting forced a smile and said, if it were another blade artist with the same power as him, then it would be 50-50. But against him, it would be 40-60 at most. 40 for me, 60 for him. It seems like there will not be much to see from now on. Su Yuan nodded. Chapter 654. Evenly Dao Xian, Yin Qihua, and Bing Ling, who came from the same place as Yi Chun, felt that Yi Chun did not have much of a chance. It was not that Yi Chun was weak, but that Dugu Ju was just too powerful. One blade, he had beaten Xiao Chuha, who was one of the top 5 young warriors, to the point that he could not even fight back. This kind of power had already surpassed the top 5 young warriors. Even if it were by Wu Xue, he would not have much of a chance to win against him, not to mention Yi Chun. Bai Wuxue looked at Dugu Ju with a serious expression. He shook his head and did not say anything. Ting! Lu Xiaoyou's sword kept vibrating, letting out a clear sword hum. The second Dugu Ju beat Xiao Chuha. The sword hum reached its peak, almost flying out of its scabbard. Ah, we have all underestimated Dugu Ju. Who knew that he would grow to this level within a year? Right now, not to mention Yi Chun, no one under the age of 40 could beat him. Hai Weia looked at Yi Chun and sighed. Yin Feng Feng said, the final battle has not started yet. Perhaps there will be a chance. Let's hope so. Hai Weia moved his gaze away and looked at Yi Chun. Under everyone's gaze, Yi Chun stood up. A heavy wind blew past, causing his blue robe to float in the air. His long black hair danced in the air like ink. Dugu Ju, you have the right to challenge me now. The first sentence that Yi Chun said after standing up had caused a huge commotion. Did I hear it right? Some people thought that they had heard it wrong. I have the right to challenge you? Dugu Ju squinted his eyes. He was different from the others. If it were someone else who said this, he would not care about it at all. But what Yi Chun said had given him a strong sense of danger. It was like a great sword was about to be pulled out of its scabbard. This is Yi Chun? Lu Xiaoyu frowned. Xiao Chuha had lost to Dugu Ju, so there was nothing for him to do today. He knew that he did not have that much confidence in fighting against Dugu Ju, which was undeniable. But he and Yi Chun were both sword artists, so what Yi Chun said was obviously way too arrogant. Yi Chun, today is the day of your duel with Dugu Ju. However, I would like to know what level your sword art has reached. Yi Chun nodded. Sure, let's decide the winner in 3 moves. All right, let's limit it to 3 moves. Stretching his body, Lu Xiaoyu soared into the sky like a white dragon, flying towards Yi Chun at an extreme speed. Before he arrived, a sharp sword chi had already pierced through the air. Lu Xiaoyu and Yi Chun want to fight too. Many people were surprised. Sky Kill sword art. Lu Xiaoyou's sword art could only be described in 3 words: fast, brutal, and accurate. And the most powerful attack would be his Sky Kill sword art. Once performed, the space seemed to have shrunk, just like Xia Hozuan and Yi Chen's void-shattering finger art, which could ignore the distance between them. However, the Sky Kill sword art did not contain the space profound, but the profound of wind. The wind was everywhere, and so was the Sky Kill sword art. Lu Xiaoyu waved out his sword, and all of the wind turned into sword chi, attacking toward Yi Chun. No wonder Xiao Chuha had lost him before. Yi Chen's expression changed, not daring to take it lightly. Since the two were limited to 3 attacks, it was obvious that it was not a real battle of life and death. Therefore, losing 1 move was still a loss. Taking out his long sword, Yi Chun took a deep breath and took a step forward. Something strange happened. Yi Chen's soul seemed to have left his body as he walked out of his body. He threw out a sword attack toward that sword chi. Then he changed his step art, and another Yi Chun walked out, waving his sword toward the sky as well. 3, 5, 7. Within that second, Yi Chun had taken 7 steps, turning into 7 Yi Chens. Although they were waving their swords in an orderly manner, it gave people the feeling that there were 7 Yi Chens waving swords at the same time. Pooh! 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 The sword chi disappeared completely, and the space twisted a bit. Such a fast sword. Everyone watching the battle was shocked by Yi Chen's sword art. They could not help but open their eyes wide. Sky's slaying sword. Lu Xiaoyu's expression changed as the Zhen Yuan inside his body burst out and poured into his longsword. A sword artist Zhen Yuan had always been pure, not to mention that Lu Xiaoyu's cultivation base was already at the peak of late sea of Soul's realm. As a huge amount of Zhen Yuan poured in, the sharp longsword in his hand seemed to twist like a beam of twisted light. His hand grabbed onto the end of the light tightly as he stabbed toward Yi Chun. Pop! This sword stab seemed to have broken through some kind of barrier. The mountain peak where Yi Chun was had started to twist. At first glance, it seemed like there was a mirror there, and it could shatter at any moment. Being inside the mirror, Yi Chun would not be able to escape. Breaking the space is not that far away. Su Yuan knew how powerful this sword attack was. Normally, only life and death realm warriors could break the space. But of course, life and death realm warriors were way too powerful. Even a normal punch would be able to shatter the space, not to mention life and death realm warriors. Below life and death realm, even the half-step king warriors would have the power to break the space. However, if they wanted to escape into the surreal space, it would still be a long way off. As for warriors below the half-step king warrior level, no one had ever heard of anyone being able to break the space. But this sword attack of Lu Xiaoyu was able to twist the space like a mirror. Thunder Devour. Silver lightning gathered at the tip of the sword. Yi Chun did not back out at all as he threw out a sword attack. A perfect thunderball appeared out of nowhere. Boom! The space started to shake, and the sky suddenly turned bright blue. Under this intense light, Yi Chun and Lu Xiaoyu looked like two twisted shadows that could be torn apart at any second. All right, I indeed did not expect that your power had already reached this level. I admit that I have underestimated you. Everyone in the world has underestimated you. Lu Xiaoyu had been shaken by that exploding thunderball. He almost puked out a mouthful of blood. That sword attack of his had only touched the edge of breaking the space, and was still far away from actually breaking it. The space was not like a mirror, and it was not that fragile. Even though it looked like it was about to shatter, it could actually handle a couple times more power than before. So, this step was extremely difficult. So powerful. Xiao Chua's face was pale as a complicated look flashed through his eyes. While he was still immersed in the battle between the top 5 young warriors, Dugu Ju and Yi Chun had already caught up and even surpassed him. It was a huge blow to him, and it had denied him everything. The third attack, let me do it. Yi Chun did not care about the explosion. His body shook once, and that vague shadow disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already right next to Lu Xiaoyu. Spiritual sword attack. 3 consecutive slashes. The spiritual sword attack was extremely fast, leaving only a flash of light. Ting! Ting! Shoo! Lu Xiaoyu's sword was indeed fast, blocking out Yi Chun's first 2 sword attacks. However, he could not handle the third one anymore. It was not because he was not fast enough, but because he could not grasp the timing. Without that, as long as his sword speed was not faster than Yi Chun's, he would lose. His right arm went cold, and Lu Xiaoyu was blown away. Standing in the air, quietly, that burning blue light had not disappeared yet. Yi Chun said lightly, 3 attacks have passed. Lu Xiaoyu looked at the sword mark on his right arm, his face full of shock. What? Su Yuan had not expected this at all, so he looked at Xie Baiting with shock. The two exchanged a look, not knowing what to say. Xie Baiting opened his mouth a couple of times as if he wanted to say something, and then closed it again. In the end, he said, I am getting old. My eyes are getting worse. I cannot even see through a young man's power. Su Yuan said bitterly, it is not that we are getting worse. It is just that this young man is way too talented. He has been keeping a low profile, and no one knows how powerful he is. First, Dugu Ju had beaten Xiao Chuha, and then Yi Chun, who was not expected to win, had beaten Lu Xiaoyu. 2 of the top 5 young warriors had fallen one after another. The former was still okay, since everyone had already recognized him from the beginning. But the latter was basically not expected. They only thought that after Dugu Ju had beaten Xiao Chuha, there would be nothing to see anymore. In their minds, No matter how powerful Yi Chun was, he would not be as powerful as the top 5 young warriors. Reality told them Duguju was a monster. Yi Chun was also a monster. Within 1 year, Duguju's power could increase by a couple of times, and so could Yi Chun. There was nothing that he could not do. No wonder he said that Duguju has the right to challenge him. Someone suddenly realized, it is still hard to say right now. We will have to see how the battle between him and Duguju turns out. But it is a bit more interesting now. Luckily, I did not leave. Monster against monster. This is the top battle. After beating Lu Xiaoyu with 3 attacks, no one dared to underestimate Yi Chun anymore. They all calmly waited for the battle between Duguju and Yi Chun. If one had to ask who was the most emotional, it would naturally be Li Daoxian and the other 2. They felt like they were in a dream, their mouths slightly open. Yi Chun's brilliance was too dazzling, so much so that they felt like they did not know Yi Chun at all. The Yi Chun of the past was no longer the Yi Chun in front of them, and the Yi Chun in front of them was the real Yi Chun. I didn't misjudge you. You're my real opponent. Duguju was slightly different, but he soon revealed an excited expression. What top 5 young warriors? What blade down master? None of that mattered. He had already surpassed those that he should have surpassed, and the one that he had yet to surpass was still Yi Chun. Let's fight. After warming up, Yi Chun's blood started to boil. A destructive sword intent exploded, and the sky suddenly turned dark. It was as if they had arrived in a dark, starry sky. There were signs of destruction everywhere. If one's mind was weak, they would not even have the courage to pick up their weapons and fight. Duguju's blade intent made people feel despair, but Yi Chun's sword intent was suppressing Duguju's blade intent, not giving it any chance to fight back. The place where Yi Chun was at was like a sword domain. Thousands of sword intents pointed to hell. Although despair can't do anything to you, it can give me power. Duguju knew that he would not be able to do anything to Yi Chun in terms of willpower. So, he could only let himself be in despair and absorb power. His body flashed once as Duguju held his blade with both of his hands. His blade intent was pushed to its limit, and he threw out a blade attack at Yi Chun with extreme power. Xiao Chuha realized bitterly that this blade attack from Duguju was even more powerful than when he was battling with him. It was obvious that he had not used all of his power yet. Chapter 655. Dang! Dazzling sparks burst forth, lighting up the sky. In the blink of an eye, Yi Chun swung his sword at the weak point of the long saber, bouncing Duguju away, causing his opponent's follow-up attack to end in vain. The moment Duguju was bounced away, he immediately knew that the situation was not good. He did not expect Yi Chun's observation and accuracy to have reached the acme of perfection. His saber was extremely fast, but his opponent was still able to find the weak point of his long saber and hit it in one strike. It was as if he was the one who sent himself to the saber. The long saber danced, impenetrable. For the first time, Duguju switched from offense to defense. The next moment, thousands of sparks burst forth from Duguju's body. Yi Chun's sword was like the most terrifying venomous snake. Once it found an opportunity, it would launch a fatal attack, not giving his opponent the slightest chance. When the spectators saw that Duguju was suppressed right from the start, they felt a little breathless. Without exchanging blows with Yi Chun, there was no way they would know how powerful he was. At first, Duguju thought that his saber speed was fast enough and his saber force was strong enough to compete with Yi Chun. He might even be able to suppress his opponent. But now, he knew that he was wrong. Not only was his opponent's sword speed and sword force not inferior to his, the scariest thing was that even though both of their speed and strength were similar, he was the one who was forced to retreat. He had a feeling of not being able to unleash his full strength. One of them changed from offense to defense, while the other changed from counterattack to all-out attack. The process could only be described as a flash of lightning. The spectators could only see the proof of their exchange from the sparks. Otherwise, they would have thought that the two of them did not even touch each other. Ding, 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 ding. Duguju's defense was flawless. Even Yi Chun was unable to break through it. However, Yi Chun could weaken his defense. Every strike landed on the weak point of his saber. Although there were too many strikes, it was not very accurate. But out of 10 strikes, he would succeed at least 5 to 6 times. Like spinning silk from a cocoon, Duguju's saber-light defense became thinner and thinner. It was very clear that under Yi Chen's fierce attacks, his saber speed was starting to slow down. If this continued, when his saber speed slowed down by half a beat, his defense would be broken. All of a sudden, that despairing chi on Duguju's body increased again. A white flame burned in the depth of his left eye, and his hair turned gray as well. That thinner saber-light defense started to increase at a visible speed, steadily blocking out Yi Chen's incoming attack. Not only that, once his saber-light defense reached a new level, Duguju shook his wrist, and that saber-light defense disappeared completely. It turned into a bright saber light, attacking toward Yi Chen. It was indeed the despairing saber attack, a different kind of despairing saber attack. Yi Chen had been through hundreds of battles, and he had never failed in terms of technique. This time it was the same. He held his sword with both of his hands, attacking on that saber light. That golden pattern spread out in all directions. Boom! Yi Chen had only backed out dozens of steps, and his body's center of gravity had not changed at all. Just this alone showed that he was a couple of times more powerful than Xiao Chuha. If Duguju's saber power was extremely powerful, then Yi Chen's sword art would be unpredictable. This was everyone's first impression, since that blade attack was way too sudden and horrifying. However, even in that kind of situation, Yi Chen was still able to block it out. After getting the upper hand with that blade attack, Duguju did not stop attacking. He threw out dozens of blade attacks toward Yi Chen, and each one of them looked like a white rainbow. Blocking out one blade attack was not that scary, but to block out dozens of them would be almost impossible. Even Xiao Chuha could not block out the real despairing saber attack, and right now, it only had about 1/3 of its power. After hundreds of blade attacks, normal defense would not be able to handle it at all. What a powerful power! Yi Chen could sense that Duguju's blade speed and power had reached a whole new level. Its attacking power had increased drastically. Each blade attack was just like a normal ace attack. If he wanted to defend against it, he would have to use his ace attacks, which would be the only way out. Hoo! 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 The long sword was waved in the air. With Yi Chen as the starting point, circles of golden patterns spread out, blocking out the incoming white blade light one after another. What? Consecutive ace attacks? Duguju was shocked, and his blade attack could not help but pause for a second. Although his despairing blade attack was an ace attack, it was different from normal ace attacks. It was based on his own body, and there was nothing special about the blade attack. Therefore, it could be performed continuously. Of course, performing it too fast would weaken the blade power. But it did not matter. Even if it only had 1/3 of its power, with enough of it, it would still be more powerful than 100% despairing blade attack. However, Yi Chen's ace attacks had canceled out this attack completely. Thunder Devour. The sword momentum changed. Yi Chen's figure rushed forward, and he waved his sword to release a perfect thunderball. The thunderball triggered a circle of space ripples, and instantly appeared in front of Duguju. Break! Duguju's eyes were burning with a white flame, and he slashed the thunderball with his blade. Only when the Thunder Devour was in a perfect state could it burst out with the greatest destructive power. After being slashed in half, it could not even exert 1/10 of its power. Duguju's blade attack could be said to have displayed the blade's speed and power to the fullest. Otherwise, if he was just a little bit slower, the thunderball would have exploded in an instant. These two are actually strong to such a degree. There were at least 20 or 30 experts who came to watch the battle. They sadly found that since the beginning of the battle, the strength that Duguju and Yi Chen had displayed was enough to kill them in a second. Just a random blade light and sword shadow could cut them in half. An unprecedented battle between the young generation. Elder Gao Changtian of the Pavilion Master had come as well. The development of Duguju and Yi Chen was beyond his expectation. These two were 28 years old, and the other was 26 years old. Their ages were almost the same, but their power had surpassed, that of the young generation. Peerless Proud Pair. Someone blurted out the name without thinking. Peerless Proud Pair. This is a good description. The people next to him pondered for a while, and they felt that it was a good description for Dugu Ju and Yichun. Just like that, the Peerless Proud Pair had become a unique term for Dugu Ju and Yichun. As for Dantai Mingwei, although she was also known as a monster, she was a woman after all, and it was a bit awkward for her to be called a peerless proud pair with a man. Besides, not many people knew about Dantai Mingwei's real power. 3 consecutive cuts. Yichun activated his sword steps. His body turned into a beam of sword light, moving around without a fixed direction. The longsword in his hand was either cutting, stabbing, or cutting, aiming right at Dugu Ju's weak spot. Dugu Ju was most afraid of close combat with Yichun, since it required a lot of skills. His skills were already scary enough, but Yichun was even better. Before, Lu Xiaoyu, who had a great sword art, had been defeated by Yichun's spiritual sword 3 consecutive cuts. The strong sense of danger had pushed Dugu Ju's reflexes to the limit. He blocked out Yichun's last cut, but that sharp sword chi had still taken away a piece of his sleeve. Despairing Fox. Taking 3 steps back, Dugu Ju's long gray hair danced in the air. He threw out a demonic fox phantom in the air. The demonic fox looked ferocious with its sharp teeth all over its body. It opened its mouth and tried to swallow Yichun. Explode. A thunderball was thrown into the demonic fox phantom's mouth. Boom! The demonic fox phantom exploded into pieces, and the electric shock waves spread out in all directions. All right, that's enough. Yichun suddenly increased his speed. He used his dragon power on his arm and poured his Jun Yuan into his longsword. He then threw out an extremely fast sword attack at Dugu Ju. This sword attack was so fast that it looked like an illusion. So fast. Am I going to lose? Dugu Ju was suddenly filled with despair. However, it was different from before. This despair was brought to him by Yichun and not by himself. It had to be said that Yichun had still underestimated the power of despair. Despair could make one's potential burst out instantly. Dugu Ju felt like he was back in the evil demon cave again. Dang! At that critical moment, Dugu Ju saw the sword's trajectory and threw out his blade to meet it. A huge spark spread out in a sphere, and a huge fireball appeared between the two. HM, you can even block it like this? Close combat was Yichun's strongest power. He could not only use his extraordinary skills, but also have the dragon power. In other words, unless Dugu Ju's defense was like Xia Hozuan's, who had swallowed a Blood Emperor battle spirit pellet, he would not be able to block out this sword attack at all. But Dugu Ju was not Xia Hozuan after all. The despair had increased his 5 senses to a whole new level, allowing him to see the sword's trajectory. The power of despair has its limit. Yichun's hands were covered by a layer of white dragon bone defense as he held onto his sword tightly. He threw out one sword attack after another at Dugu Ju. Each time he threw out a sword attack, the space would twist a little. The whole space was like a mirror, reflecting the two's figures. Dugu Ju's physical power was not low either, which was about 300,000 pounds. Half of it was his own power, and the other half was from training some of the spirit plants that could increase his power. After all, it was not just the dragon blood plant that could increase chi power. It was just that the dragon blood plant had the best effect. Dang, dang, dang. Balls of fireballs exploded as Dugu Ju backed out while Yichun continued to attack. Finally, both of Dugu Ju's arms went numb, and he was stabbed in the shoulder by Yichun. That sharp sword power traveled through the defense armor and landed on the inside of Dugu Ju's shoulder. Boom! Dugu Ju puked out a huge amount of blood as his body was blown backward. Because of the extreme speed, circles of pattern appeared in front of him. Dugu Ju has lost. Just how powerful is this Yichun? This is unbelievable. Even Dugu Ju could not stop Yichun. We have all made a wrong estimation. Monstrous, monstrous. Dugu Ju is monstrous enough, but Yichun is even more monstrous. Everyone felt that Dugu Ju was strong enough, so strong that it was terrifying. However, such a strong Dugu Ju still couldn't stop Yichun. This caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Yi Chun, who had fully displayed his strength, made everyone feel what it meant to be unstoppable for the first time. Despair. At this moment, Dugu Ju, who was flying backward, suddenly shouted. He used all the strength in his body, as well as the hidden potential in the depths of his heart, and slashed out with his blade. When this blade slashed out, the boundless and terrifying blade light instantly shattered, turning into a gray light pillar with a diameter of several hundred meters, sweeping towards Yi Chun. Within the gray light pillar, one could vaguely see the shadows of countless people, and the cries of ghosts and gods could be heard. You can't block this blade. After the blade slashed out, Dugu Ju didn't even have the strength to control his body. The eerie white flames in his eyes also dissipated into nothingness. In his sight, the gray light column was about to devour Yi Chun at a lightning-fast speed. Dodging it was already impossible. The spectators clearly didn't expect that Dugu Ju would have an even more terrifying killing move. All of their mouths were wide open. The so-called instant reversal was nothing more than this. Chapter 656. The power of the gray light beam locked onto Yi Chun, making the space around Yi Chun seem to be frozen. Not to mention escaping. He couldn't even move. Under this blade attack, there was only one way to escape, and that was to fight back with an attack. There was no second way. It would be impossible for Yi Chun to not be shocked, but after the shock, his expression returned to normal. Originally, he hadn't planned to reveal his most powerful attack, the Gold Fury. It wasn't a life and death battle. It wouldn't be wise to reveal his most powerful attack. As the saying went, one more trump card meant one more chance to save his life. And after using it, the effect would be halved. But now he had to use it. Gold Fury. Feeling the terrifying blade pressure coming towards him, Yi Chun lowered his center of gravity and held his sword with both hands. He raised it up high and then slashed down with all his might. Boom! The golden ripples twisted and elongated, like the traces left behind by a large ship passing by on a lake. In front of the golden ripples was a perfect arc. The arc was like a side blade, following the gaps, cutting through the gray light pillar. The hundreds of meters thick and thousands of meters long gray light beam was cut open in an instant. The power dissipated, causing the two halves of the gray light beam to scatter and fill the entire sky. In the middle of the sky, there was a smear of gold. It was this smear of gold that had split the gray sky in half, like yin and yang. After the gray light disappeared, everyone opened their eyes and looked towards the battlefield. On the Nine-Dragon Lake, a shallow mark was disappearing. Following the mark, everyone found Dugu Ju. Right now, Dugu Ju was in a very bad shape. His body had crashed into the lake, creating a huge pit that was several meters wide and dozens of meters deep. Dugu Ju was lying in the middle of the pit, covered in mud, and his hair was wet. The armor on his chest had caved in, and the light was dim. Seeing Dugu Ju's current state, gasping sounds could be heard everywhere. No one had expected that Dugu Ju, who was about to make a comeback, would end up like this. The power of that last blade attack had made every single one of them feel a trace of despair. Depending on the distance, the degree of despair would be different. But, without a doubt, that blade attack of Dugu Ju's had the destructive power to instantly kill a group of experts. They had thought that Dugu Ju would be able to turn the tables, but the result was the opposite. Arg! Dugu Ju spat out a mouthful of blood. He didn't even have the strength to stand up. He tried to raise his eyes and look toward the sky. In his sight, Yi Chun, who was dressed in blue, was standing high in the sky. His long sword was already sheathed, and his long black hair was fluttering in the wind. At the same time, everyone's eyes fell on Yi Chun. Compared to Dugu Ju, Yi Chun was unscathed. Those who were observant could see that there were no traces of his clothes being torn. In other words, in this battle, Yi Chun had completely suppressed Dugu Ju. Even when Dugu Ju fell, Yi Chun didn't feel the slightest threat. This is too scary. Even someone as strong as Dugu Ju didn't have a chance to fight back against Yi Chun. Dugu Ju can absorb the power of despair, but Yi Chun has already surpassed despair. Everyone was discussing. Although they couldn't see the details clearly, they could tell that Duguju was completely defeated by Yi Chun in every aspect. In terms of experience, Yi Chun wasn't lacking. In terms of battle techniques, Yi Chun had a complete advantage. Every time Duguju used the Despair Blade to increase his battle power, it would be neutralized by Yi Chun's sword and hit his weak spot. Many people sighed in their hearts. It was a tragedy for Duguju to encounter Yi Chun. If it was someone else who was as strong as Yi Chun, even if he couldn't win, he wouldn't have lost so badly. In the hands of Yi Chun, Duguju was being suppressed from the beginning until the end, and he didn't have his own rhythm. This is Yi Chun. Li Daoxian and the other two hadn't seen Yi Chun for about 2 years. They originally thought that even if Yi Chun's strength was very high, it wouldn't be enough to surprise them. After all, they had already been shocked countless times. But now, they still couldn't help but exclaim. If it was a few years ago, they could still see Yi Chun's back. Now, they couldn't even see his shadow. All they could see were the traces and glory he left behind. Absolute strength can disregard everything. Bai Wuxiue glanced at Duguju and murmured to himself. Being able to make Bai Wuxiue mention the absolute power would not be easy at all. The so-called absolute power was not the level of cultivation. Otherwise, only the Surreal King would have the right to talk about the absolute power, because he was the #1 warrior of the whole true spirit continent. In Bai Wuxiue's eyes, the absolute power was the highest standard of power evaluation. For normal people, only the profound and will power would be qualified. But the power was not that important. Being able to use all of it would be the most important. When the power difference was not that big, the profound and will power could be ignored. What would be left would be the quality, battle talent, and understanding of battling. Being powerful in every aspect would be the absolute power. Among the same level warriors, they would be invincible. It was like a wooden bucket. If there was no shortcut, the bucket would be complete and could be filled with water. But if there was a shortcut, the water would not be able to be filled, and there would always be some loss. Bai Wuxiue was very clear that the reason he was able to become the leader of the top 5 young warriors was not because of his great talent or comprehensive ability. The others were not weaker than him, but in terms of absolute power, he was more powerful than the others. Even if it was Duguju, he could still see some flaws. But with the appearance of Yi Chun, he had realized for the first time that Yi Chun's absolute power was even more powerful than his. Of course, everyone had to move forward. Although his absolute power was similar to Yi Chun's, in terms of potential, he had almost reached his limit. The chance of him reaching the life and death realm in this lifetime was not that big. On the other hand, Duguju might be able to reach the life and death realm. This was the difference in potential. Between the same level, it was about the absolute power. In a lifetime, it was about the potential. The higher the potential, the faster the power would increase. This is so embarrassing. Let's go. Su Yuan from the Earth Sword School looked embarrassed. Before, he and Xie Baiting were not talking loudly, but they were not being secretive either. So, there would definitely be people nearby who could hear them. And now, Yi Chun had won without any suspense. No matter how thick his skin was, he could not help but feel a bit embarrassed. Shoo! Shoo! The 2 seniors left the 9 Dragon Mountain first. Su Yuan and Xie Baiting's departure did not attract much attention. Most of the people's attention was on Duguju and Yi Chun. Putting a pellet into his mouth, Duguju activated his martial art to refine part of the medicinal power. Only then did he manage to stand up with difficulty, wobbling in the middle of the huge pit. Yi Chun, I, Duguju, have never lost before in my generation. You're the first one to beat me. Duguju took a deep breath and said slowly. Hearing this, the crowd was even more shocked. Before, because they were too excited, they did not think too much. But after Duguju's reminder, they all recalled Duguju's achievements. Duguju had shown his monstrous talent since he was young. He had fought thousands of battles, big and small, but he had never lost once. The only times he had a draw were against the other monstrous talent, Dantai Mingwei. Other than Dantai Mingwei, Duguju had always had the last laugh. and Yi Chun had broken Duguju's record of winning all the time. He was also the first person to officially beat Duguju. Most importantly, both of them were monstrous talents, but they were also each other's stepping stones. When one fell, the other would rise to glory. In the first battle, the winner was Yi Chun. In the sky, Yi Chun said, "Among the same generation, I have never met a worthy opponent either." It was a simple sentence, but it shocked a lot of people. They did not know if Yi Chun meant it on purpose because this sentence included Duguju as well. In other words, until now, Yi Chun had not lost even once, even if his opponent was Duguju. On an unremarkable little mountain, Li Daoxian sighed and said, "He has never been defeated before. In the past, he was somewhat lucky to have not been defeated. Now, he is undefeated because of the general trend. In the same generation, there is no one who can defeat him. Not losing when one was weak depended on luck. For example, when Yi Chun was still at the condensing reality realm or clasping yuan realm, he would most likely lose when he came to the sky martial region. As he became more and more powerful, the luck factor gradually disappeared. Without luck, among the same generation, there was no one who could beat him. Against an undefeated opponent, one of them will definitely lose. Too bad I lost." A bitter look appeared on Duguju's face. It was his first time losing, so it would be impossible to say that he did not have any negative emotions. But this loss seemed to have unlocked some kind of shackle for him, making him feel relaxed. From now on, he would be even more motivated. Before, he was trying to not lose, but now, he was trying to beat Yi Chun. The former was for himself, and the latter was also for himself. Everyone will face failure eventually. Wait for me in front. Standing up straight, Duguju's chi was very weak, but his aura did not decrease. Instead, it increased. A wave of blade intent that was full of explosive power exploded out, seeming like it was going to break and rise again. Everyone was shocked. In their eyes, Duguju seemed to be even more powerful than before. Could it be that there was no limit to his potential? Good Duguju, good Yi Chun. The elder of the pavilion, Gao Changtian, laughed out loud. The annual ranking list would be updated next month. Gao Changtian was in charge of the young generation, but this time it was not the young generation that was in the limelight, but two young warriors. Of course, the young generation was also included in the list, and Gao Changtian was in charge of it as well. Duguju, although you have lost to Yi Chun, according to the current information, you have the right to be in the top 5, maybe even higher. Gao Changtian said, "Huh, if Duguju is in the top 5, wouldn't that mean that Xie Baiting will be squeezed out?" Someone looked confused. Gao Changtian could tell that everyone was confused, so he said, "The ranking changes every year. After this, Duguju will only get stronger. Therefore, there should be no problem for him to be in the top 5. Then, Gao Changtian turned his head and looked at Yi Chun. "Yi Chun, if I'm not wrong, this year's ranking will be either number 1 or number 2. What?" Gao Changtian's words stunned everyone present. The number 2 was still acceptable, but the number 1 was the head elder of the Void Martial School, the head of the 9 great martial institutions. People called him the Axe Master. With 2 words as his title, one could imagine how powerful he was. Normally, many people would want to have 2 words as their title, such as the Sword Master, the Blade Master, or the Spear Master. Unfortunately, there were only a few who could have 2 words as their title, because the meaning behind it was extraordinary. It meant that one was the absolute number 1 in a certain field. The Axe Master was the number 1 among all the Axe Masters, and no one could surpass him. "Little brother, I will give you a title. I wonder if you dare to accept it?" Gao Changtian ignored the other's expressions and said with a smile, "Oh, what title?" Yi Chun asked. "Sword Master." Chapter 657. Gao Changtian's words had shocked everyone. Even Yin Feng and Hai Wuya frowned, knowing that it would not be easy to be called the Sword Master. Sword Master. Yi Chun was shocked. There were a lot of master-level warriors in the world. Some of them used weapons, such as blades, spears, swords, whips, hammers, staffs, axes, and so on. Some of them were barehanded and specialized in their palms, fists, or kicks. The number one in each area would have the right to fight for the title, such as Blade Master, Spear Master, Axe Master, Head Master, Fist Master, and Leg Master. But it was undeniable that among all of them, the Sword Master and Blade Master were the hardest to get, because most of them were sword or blade users. Even so, there were not that many who could get the title, and there were less than 5 of them in the whole true Spirit continent. As a matter of fact, it was not that there was no first place among sword masters and saber masters. If there was a battle of life and death, the first and second place would definitely be decided. However, no one dared to call themselves sword master or saber master because once they used this title, it meant that they looked down on others and would have to face challenges again and again. If the gap was not big, it was very likely that they would be defeated and become a joke. Therefore, without an absolute advantage, no one dared to call themselves sword master or saber master. If they wanted to use it, sure, but they would have to beat the others to admit their title. Of course, even if they did, it would only be temporary. Once someone thought that they could challenge you, they would come again. In other words, the title of Sword Master was not only a huge honor, but also a huge trouble. After all, if you could beat all of the master-level warriors in the world, there would always be people who would not accept it. You would then become the number 1 target of all the master-level warriors in the world. Yi Chun said, "Sword Master, it is indeed a big temptation, but you still cannot give me this title." Gao Chantian laughed. "Of course, I cannot represent everyone in the world, but I have the right to give someone title. As for whether you can keep this title or not, it has nothing to do with me. Plus, I'm only asking if you dare to take it or not. If you do not, then just pretend that I did not say anything." With Yi Chen's personality, he wouldn't be so reckless. Li Daoxian had some understanding of Yi Chen. In his opinion, Yi Chen wouldn't take this hot potato. Yan Qihua and Bing Ling nodded slightly. They didn't think that Yi Chen would do that either. "All right, since you asked me if I dare or not, then why wouldn't I dare? From today onwards, the title of Sword Master belongs to me." Yi Chen's eyes flashed with sharpness as he sternly said, "Oh." Gao Chantian was shocked. Although he was the one who suggested this title, he didn't think that Yi Chen would dare to accept the title of Sword Master. Moreover, he did it so naturally and without a trace of fear, as if this decision was nothing to him. Too arrogant. Although it's true that Yi Chen is strong, the title of Sword Master isn't something he can become just because he wants to. Just wait and see. He won't be able to keep it for long. The title of Sword Master hasn't appeared for hundreds of years. Maybe in a few years, Yi Chen will have the right to become Sword Master, but not now. Indeed, it's not hard to obtain the title of Sword Master, but it's hard to keep it. Once you lose it, you will become the laughing stock of the world. At this moment, the crowd was in an uproar. Those who supported Yi Chen couldn't help but frown. Their impression of Yi Chen was greatly reduced. Most people thought that Yi Chen was young and frivolous, accepting the title after being tempted by Gao Changtian. After all, the title of Sword Master was a supreme honor to all sword users in the world. Who wouldn't want to become a Sword Master? But without strength, it would be arrogance. Defeating Dugu Ju didn't mean that he was better than all the other sword users in the world. Li Daoxian and the other 2 were shocked. They thought that they had some understanding of Yi Chen, but it seemed like they knew far less about Yi Chen. Did I hear it wrong? Hai Weian mumbled to himself. Yin Feng thought about it. We were all wrong about him. This is the real Yi Chen. Unable to get rid of the temptation of fame, after all. A cold light flashed through Lu Xiaoyou's eyes. His title was the Sword Master, but there was a Ji in between, so it was not the real Sword Master. He sneered inwardly at Yi Chen for daring to accept the title. On the side, Bai Wuxue shook his head. "I don't think so." Hearing him, Lu Xiaoyu looked over at Bai Wuxue. Bai Wuxue said slowly, "People who are not powerful enough to call themselves Sword Master are arrogant. However, people who are powerful enough to call themselves Sword Master are courageous." Without a doubt, Yi Chen already has the power. Even compared to those old sword artists who are over 250 years old and are not in the master-level warrior ranking, he would not be any weaker. Calling himself Sword Master in this kind of situation would require a lot of courage that normal people would not have. If he did not dare to accept the title of Sword Master, then it would be disappointing because he would be afraid that he would not be able to keep the title, afraid that he would fail. Therefore, his heart of sword art would not be pure and flawless. As for fame and fortune, everyone would have it. If one could not face the fame and fortune, then he would not be able to face himself. Lu Xiaoyu, I can see that your sword art is slightly unstable because of Yi Chen's appearance. Lu Xiaoyu was speechless. No one knew that he had lost to Bai Wuxue before. He was the only one who knew about Bai Wuxue's power. When Bai Wuxue and Xiao Hozun battled, only he could tell that Bai Wuxue had not used all of his power yet. Crazy. He dares to accept the title of Sword Master? Bai Minghui could not help but shiver. If he can keep the title, then I will not be his enemy from now on. Sidu Hao's expression changed a couple of times as he thought to himself. Yi Chen, you better take back the title of Sword Master. Right now, you do not have the power to take it. As the voice was heard, 3 human figures flew out. They were the Fire Sword Master, who was ranked 29, 33, and the Shadow Sword Master, who was ranked 45. Among the 72 people on the ranking, there were dozens of them who used swords. Yi Chen said lightly, I am the Sword Master. Why would I not dare to take it? The Shadow Sword Master took out his long sword and said, Since that is the case, do you dare to take 10 attacks from us? If you do not lose within 10 attacks, then we will admit that you are the Sword Master. Fighting 3 against 1, it would naturally be unfair. Therefore, the Shadow Sword Master decided to limit it to 10 attacks. With that, no one there would object to it, since it was not a battle, but a test to see if Yi Chen had the power to be the Sword Master. If he did, then it would be normal for him to not lose within 10 attacks. No need to go through all this trouble. If I cannot beat you within 10 attacks, then I will forget about the Sword Master title. Arrogant. The Fire Sword Master yelled out as he threw out a burning sword chi attack toward Yi Chen. Broken Sword 33 movement. Illusion Sword Spell. The Shattering Sword Master and the Shadow Sword Master both threw out their ace attacks as well. Sword Step. Yi Chen's body was like a sword light, traveling between the interweaving sword chi. The sword light flashed once, and all of the attacks missed. They could not even touch Yi Chen's protective Jin Yuan layer at all. First attack. Yi Chen's first target was the Shattering Sword Master, who was the closest to him. He shook his wrist, and that gentle sword wind was about to attack him. Back out. The Fire Sword Master caught up. His red long sword drew out a cross in the air. As long as Yi Chen did not back out, even if he managed to beat the Shattering Sword Master, he would still have to take 1 sword attack from him. Naturally, he would be at a disadvantage. 1 against 3 was not that easy. Not being at a disadvantage was even more difficult, since when the 3 of them attacked each other, there would be 3 attacks. As long as 1 was hit, 1 would be at a disadvantage. This was different from a life and death battle. There was no fairness or unfairness here. However, he had obviously underestimated Yi Chen. Taking back his long sword, Yi Chen jumped back. While he was in the air, his sword body shone with silver lightning. The lightning quickly gathered into a thunderball and shot out. Not good. The Fire Sword Master and the Shattering Sword Master backed out quickly and threw out their ace attacks toward the thunderball. Boom! A huge shockwave with electricity spread out. The Fire Sword Master and the Shattering Sword Master were both blown out backward, puking out a huge mouthful of blood. Phantom Formless Sword. Right then, the shadow-like Shadow Sword Master suddenly attacked. Dozens of invisible sword chi attacked toward Yi Chen. Boom, 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 boom. Yi Chen was already prepared for the Shadow Sword Master. Within a second, he threw out dozens of sword attacks. Dozens of golden ripples spread out, destroying the Shadow Sword Master's sword chi and covering his opponent within. Pooh! The Shadow Sword Master was blown out as well. 3 sword attacks, 1 fake, and 2 real. The 3 master-level swordsmen were defeated in a row. In fact, Yi Chen did not need to spend so much effort. He only needed to use his Gold Fury, and he would be able to beat the 3 easily, even from a long distance. However, The three of them were quite far away from each other, and they were not gathered together. Using the Gold Fury would still require 3 attacks, which would be pointless. Plus, these 3 were not qualified enough for him to use his Gold Fury. Flying out for hundreds of meters, the Fire Sword Master's face was pale. He could not believe it. The 3 of them combined could not even block out 3 sword attacks from Yichun. If it was one-on-one, even if his personal power was doubled, he would still be killed within seconds. There would be no hope at all. I admit that you are the Sword Master, but only the 3 of us admit it. The Fire Sword Master took a deep breath and said. The Shadow Sword Master had blood on the corner of his mouth. We admit it, but it does not mean that those master-level swordsmen admit it. You have to know that the second-ranked master-level swordsman is Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master. As far as I know, there is another Sky Sword Master who is even stronger than Su Yuan from the Earth Sword Master. However, he is already over 250 years old, so he is not on the ranking. Aside from him, some of the famous master-level swordsmen have not come out for a long time, including the Demon Sword Master, the Blood Sword Master, and the Evil Sword Master. Tu Yuan from the Shattering Sword Master opened his mouth. Yichun, it will be hard for you to keep the title of Sword Master. Maybe those master-level swordsmen don't care about the glory of the ranking, but they have to care about the title of Sword Master. As long as one uses a sword, no one would care about it. Yichun said, since I dare to call myself the Sword Master, I have already prepared for the challenges. They don't dare to call themselves Sword Master, but Yichun, dare to. If your so-called Sky Sword Master, Demon Sword Master, or Blood Sword Master dare to challenge me, I will give them the title of Sword Master. They don't dare, but I do. Gao Changtian laughed, thinking to himself, this time it is Sword Master, and next it will be Blade Master. I hope Dugaju will not disappoint me. I think the leader will not blame me either. The ranking only includes warriors under 250 years old, which is really ridiculous. Either we don't create a ranking, or we do. As long as one has the power, he or she will be able to make it. Unfortunately, it will not be possible for the next few competitions. Gao Changtian had not suggested that warriors over 250 years old should not be included in the ranking, since it would lose half of its meaning. A lot of people knew that there were still some powerful warriors over 250 years old. Although it would disturb their training, what would be the point of fighting? As for the body being too old to handle it, it would be a joke. Once one reached the Sea of Souls realm, they would have already left the realm of mortals. As long as they were not dead yet, their stamina would not decrease that much. Plus, they would have more experience, which would give them an advantage over the younger generation. Chapter 658. Hearing Yi Chen's words and Gao Changtian's attitude, some of the people became quiet. Indeed, the title of Sword Master needed someone to take it. If no one dared to take it, then there would never be a Sword Master. Yichun taking the title was not as simple as they thought. But of course, there were only a few people who could think that way. Most of the people did not agree with Yichun, thinking that within a couple of months, Yichun would become the joke of the world and a lesson for all the young people. Yichun, the battle between us is not over yet. We will fight again if fate allows it. Dugaju did not set a time limit, since it would not make any difference anymore, since the competition between him and Yichun would not last for a day or two. If he could catch up to Yichun, then there would naturally be a battle. If he could not, then everything would just be empty talk. On the other hand, if Yichun did not have enough power, then the result would be the same. What he did not expect was that when he and Yichun battled again, it would already be many years later. As Dugaju left, more and more people started to leave. Before they left, a lot of people suddenly realized that the reason why the Nine-Dragon Lake was so crowded was because Bai Wuxiue and Xia Hozuan had battled here a year ago. This year, there was also Dugaju and Yichun. What about next year? Let's go. Bai Wuxiue and Lu Xiaoyu left right after them. Yichun, we will catch up when we have time. Hai Wuya and Yin Fengfeng said goodbye to Yichun before leaving as well. All of a sudden, the Nine-Dragon Lake went from being crowded to being quiet. Everything had its downfall after reaching the peak. It was inevitable. Li Daoxian and the other two arrived at the hill where Yichun was. Li Daoxian chuckled. Yichun, long time no see. Yichun smiled. Indeed, long time no see. Time flies. Time flies, and looks get older. Luckily, we are all at the sea of Soul's realm. Even if we meet again in decades, nothing will change. Yichin smiled. Time was merciless, but it was also invincible. Only by cultivating could one preserve the most precious time, even if it was only a few short decades. Thinking back, when Yichun met Li Daoxian and the others in the competition of the Hidden Dragon rank, it was 8 years ago. At that time, they were still young and inexperienced, but they were still very young. 8 years had passed in a flash, and Yichun could not help but sigh at how fast time had passed. 8 years have passed. My appearance hasn't changed, but my heart has. No matter what, I'm still very happy to have met you, Yichun. Your appearance has brought us earth-shattering changes. The one who spoke was Yen Shihua. 8 years ago, he definitely wouldn't have said this, because he was young and full of vigor. He couldn't allow himself to fail. But after 8 years, his mentality had changed, and the way he viewed things had also changed. The appearance of Yi Chun didn't silence them. Instead, it made them erupt with even greater potential. Brother Yin is right. But besides your appearance, the only thing that hasn't changed is that you are still so bright. We should call you the Sword Master now. Bing Ling smiled, which was rare to see, like an ice flower blooming. Forcing a smile, Yichun asked, "You guys plan to stay in the Sky Martial region for a while?" "Indeed, we have just arrived in the Sky Martial region, and it is a bit strange. We plan to explore a bit." Li Daoxian nodded. Yichun said, "Hai Wuya, Yin Feng Feng, and the rest are not bad. If you run into them, just tell them that they are my friends. As for me, I will go back to the South Ritter region first." All right. The three did not reject. Traveling outside, the more friends, the better. "Then, I will go now. You guys be careful." Waving his hand, the flying puppet was thrown into the air. Yichun flipped and sat on it, turning into a beam of light and disappearing into the sky. "We are here," and he is gone. Li Daoxian sighed and looked away. For the three of them, the Sky Martial region was still very strange, and it was a new starting point. But for Yichun, there was nothing worth staying in the Sky Martial region anymore. He had everything he needed. On the way back to the South Rudra region, in the sky above the Turtle Mountain Shoe, a beam of light broke through the sky, its speed extremely fast. "Yichun, I have been waiting for you for a long time." Right then, a human figure flew into the sky, blocking in front of the flying puppet. It was a man wearing gold robes and a gold crown. Who else could it be but Xia Hozuan? The flying puppet flapped its wings, turning the momentum into resistance as it slowly slowed down. On the back of the flying puppet, Yi Chun stood up and stared at Xia Hozuan. "If I have guessed it right, you have already trained your void-shattering finger art to completion. Otherwise, you would not dare to challenge me." The void-shattering finger was a low-rank profound sense martial art, and because it contained the space profound, it was much more powerful than normal mid-rank profound sense martial arts. Right now, Yi Chun had trained it to 90% completion, which was only one step away from completion. But of course, this step would be the hardest as well. Without the basic understanding of the space profound, it would be very hard to make any progress. "You have guessed it right. Therefore, you have to lose." Xia Hozuan's eyes shone with a gold light, looking extremely powerful. Yichun shook his head. "Before, you still had a bit of hope. But now, you have no hope at all, because you do not dare to challenge me in front of everyone. That is also why you are blocking me here." What a joke. How arrogant. Xia Hozuan's expression turned cold. "All right, since you are this confident, then bring it on." Yichun put away his flying puppet and placed his hand on his sword. Shooting star finger. Xia Hozuan did not want to waste time with Yichun either, so he immediately used his best attack, shooting star finger. After half a year of closed-up training, besides his space profound, Xia Hozuan's starlight profound had also improved a lot. Right then, the shooting star finger in his hand was no different from a real meteor shower. Waves of them shot out, covering the entire sky. Break! Taking out his thunder disaster sword, Yichun held it with both of his hands and threw out a sword attack. That powerful sword aura covered up the stars, seeming unstoppable. Rumble. A huge chunk of the shooting star shower was shattered, and that massive sword chi cut out a black path in the middle of the shower. The black path extended all the way towards Xiaohozuan. This sword aura. Xiaohozuan looked confused as he pointed out his finger and shattered the sword chi. Gold pattern. Yi Chun flew over, his clothes fluttering in the wind like a god. He threw out another sword attack, and that aggressive gold pattern spread out in extreme speed. Impossible. How could his sword aura be this powerful? Xiaohozuan had to throw out 3 attacks before he managed to tear apart the gold pattern. That powerful exploding power had forced him back out dozens of steps. Nothing is impossible. Right now, I have the title of Sword Master, and my mental chi has been changing slowly, forming a great power. You, on the other hand, have always been hiding like a coward. Right now, all you're relying on is your completed void-shattering finger art. Other than that, you have nothing else. After accepting the title of Sword Master, Yi Chun somehow felt that he had become more powerful. It was not just his outer appearance, but his inner heart. Perhaps he could not bring out his inner power directly, but it would allow Yi Chun's every move to have that kind of power. It would be like the sun rising and setting, the black and white alternating, and the winter coming and going. On the other hand, Xiaohozuan had been affected by Yi Chun's sword aura, so he was already at a disadvantage. Perhaps he could bring out 100% of his power, but he would not be able to break through his limit and bring out 110% of his power. In a battle between powerful warriors, even the smallest difference would be magnified. Xiaohozuan's inner heart was not powerful enough, which was why Yi Chun's power had made him lose his cool. Sword Master title? Don't be ridiculous. Who do you think you are? Do you think anyone can get the title? In front of me, you are not even worth mentioning. Xiaohozuan roared as his whole body shone with a gold light, looking like a golden sun rising up. He looked down from above, pointing out a sharp finger at Yi Chun. Behind him, a king warrior shadow appeared. It was extremely powerful, and the whole sky seemed to have frozen. You are no longer my opponent, and you will not be in the future. Thunder Devour. Yi Chun shot into the sky, flying even higher than Xiaohozuan. His long black hair danced in the air without any wind, and that sharp sword chi surrounded his body, shattering the frozen chi field around him. He yelled with a low voice, seeming like the master of all swords. Millions of thunder and lightning gathered at the tip of the sword as he threw out a sword attack. Crack! The silver thunderball was like a lightning punishment from the sky, leaving a crystal silver trail in the air. The end of the trail was aimed right at Xiaohozuan. Boom! Boom! Su King's finger power had been shattered, and Xiaohozuan was blown away. That king warrior shadow behind him seemed to be something that had been imprinted in the mirror. As the mirror was shattered, the king warrior shadow twisted a little before disappearing completely. Xiaohozuan had been affected by the chi flow, and he could not help but puke out a small mouthful of blood. Damn! Void-shattering finger. Xiaohozuan was extremely frustrated. He was planning to get closer to Yi Chun before performing his void-shattering finger art. But right now, he cannot even get close to Yi Chun. Yi Chun's sword chi was extremely powerful, and with one sword attack, even the surreal space had been shaken, making his chi and blood boil. Shoo! The gold-colored void, shattering finger power ignored the distance between them, appearing right in front of Yi Chun within a second. Under that unstoppable finger power, the sword aura that Yi Chun had created had been shattered as well. He had to admit that the void-shattering finger was indeed powerful beyond his expectation. If it were another profound sense martial art that was similar in power, Xiaohozuan would not be this powerful. Circles of gold patterns spread out. The void-shattering finger power entered the pattern, but it did not dissipate. Instead, it was extremely condensed. But the spreading nature of the pattern had increased the resistance of the void-shattering finger power. So it was dragged to the side and shot past Yi Chun's body. Spiritual sword. Turning his body in the air, Yi Chun looked like a swift bird flying in the sky. He shook his wrist, and that silver mark landed on Xiaohozuan's chest. Chin. Sparks flew everywhere as Xiaohozuan was blown backward. You have dodged my void-shattering finger, but it does not matter. I already have a semi-extreme rank armor, so you will not be able to hurt me." Xiaohozuan was a bit surprised, but he soon laughed out loud. The semi-extreme rank armor he was wearing had come from a great master, and with it, his defense would increase by at least 50%. Added with the powerful defense profound sense martial art, it would be more than enough to cancel out 70 to 80% of Yi Chen's sword chi. As for the remaining 20 to 30%, it would be impressive if there was even 5% left. Gold Fury. Yi Chen's expression did not change as he threw out his longsword. That twisted gold pattern stretched out endlessly, landing on Xiaohozuan's semi-extreme rank armor again. Crack! A metal exploding sound was heard, and Xiaohozuan looked like he had swallowed a goose egg. His eyes popped out, and blood poured out from all of his orifices. Who? A strong wind blew out as Xiaohozuan was blown backward, landing heavily on a 9,000 meters tall mountain, shattering half of it. Isn't this Yi Chen and Xiaohozuan? Xiaohozuan has lost so badly. Inside the Turtle Mountain, a Sea of Souls realm warrior who was passing by looked surprised. Haha, I am so lucky to be able to see this. A lot of people would not know that Xiaohozuan had lost to Yi Chen. Chapter 659. Yi Chen and Xiaohozuan were both famous people. No matter who lost, it would be a big news. If they sold the news to the pavilion, they would be able to get at least 1,000 top-ranked spirit stones, since not every Sea of Souls realm warrior would be as rich as Yi Chen. Normally, normal Sea of Souls realm warriors would only have tens of thousands of top-ranked spirit stones. If they bought some extremely expensive profound sense martial arts or top-rank weapons, then they might only have a few thousand or even hundreds of top-ranked spirit stones left. Therefore, 1,000 top-ranked spirit stones was not a small amount. It was just like how even if you had hundreds of thousands of spirit stones, you would not be able to ignore 10,000. Afraid that Xiaohozuan would see him and cause him trouble, this Sea of Souls realm warrior left the Turtle Mountain without even looking back. I welcome you to challenge me anytime, if you have the determination to do so. For Yi Chen, there was no one in the young generation who could threaten him anymore. Even by Wu Xue, who had hidden his power well, would not give Yi Chen this kind of feeling. At most, he would be able to match his opponent. If Xiaohozuan wanted to challenge him again, he would not be afraid of trouble. He was sure that it would not be him who would be able to make it, but Xiaohozuan. No one would be able to keep challenging after losing so many times. If Xiaohozuan could really do it, then Yi Chen would have to change his opinion of him. Damn, I will beat you. Xiaohozuan roared, his eyes red. Right then, he was like a completely different person compared to the Xiaohozuan who had battled with by Wu Xue. Yi Chen shook his head and turned to leave. When everything was going well, everyone would feel proud and confident. But when things went bad, only a small portion of people would be able to stay true to themselves. In his previous life, Yi Chen had seen a lot of entrepreneurs jumping off buildings because of bankruptcy. Those people had been on TV when they were so famous, so enviable. But once the gap was too big, they would be even worse than normal people. Therefore, the biggest opponent would not be anyone else but oneself. Even if it were Yi Chen, he would not dare to say that he would be able to look normal and stay true to himself when things went bad. All he could do was to improve his mental state and continue to improve himself. The flying puppet flew for days and nights, passing through the mountain region and arriving at the South River region. The South River region had 4 big countries and 10 mid-sized countries. When passing by the mid-tier country, the White Mystery Country, Yi Chen's expression changed. He commanded the flying puppet to descend at the speed of light. Sect War. As he descended, Yi Chen saw hundreds of people fighting in the mountains below. These people wore 4 different types of clothing. One had a large centipede embroidered on the back. One had a small snake embroidered on the sleeves. One had a small sword embroidered on the arm, and one had a flame pattern on the chest. If Yi Chen's guess was correct, the large centipede embroidered on the robes should be the 8th rank sect, the Black Nightmare sect. The small snake embroidered on the robes should be the 8th rank sect, the Green Serpent Valley. The small sword should be the 7th rank sect, the Flying Sword sect, and the flame pattern should be the Fire Cloud sect. Of the four major sects, Black Centipede Gate and Flying Sword sect were on the same side, while Green Serpent Valley and Fire Cloud sect were on the same side. The two groups fought crazily, and there were people dying from time to time. This was Yi-Chen's first time witnessing an official sect war, and he was quite interested. Spirit vein? Shifting his gaze, Yi-Chen finally understood why the four major sects were fighting. It turned out that the essence chi in the air above the mountains was very dense. Somewhere in the mountains, there was a huge mine. The essence chi outside the mine even formed an essence chi whirlpool. The essence chi whirlpool was nearly 100 meters wide, and it seemed to be suppressed by an invisible force, causing the essence chi that had accumulated for countless years to not leak out. So, it's a top-notch low-grade spirit vein. Apart from the 4 grades of spirit vein, there were also 4 grades for each grade. Among the low-grade spirit veins, the lowest was the normal low-grade spirit vein, followed by the medium low-grade spirit vein, followed by the superior low-grade spirit vein, and the best was naturally the peak low-grade spirit vein. A normal low-grade spirit vein was enough to support the expenses of a grade 8 or grade 9 sect for 10 years. A medium low-grade spirit vein could support a grade 8 or grade 9 sect for 20 years, and a superior low-grade spirit vein could easily cause a war between 2 grade 7 sects. As for the superior low-grade spirit vein, once it appeared, there would be a situation like the following, where several sects would fight for it, even if they would suffer heavy losses. In the past 50 years, the best that the Sky Cloud Martial School had ever found was a mid-level low-grade spirit vein, and the Yi family had also found a normal low-grade spirit vein. The spirit fountain was way too important for a martial institution. It could be said that it was the foundation of a martial institution. Not everyone in the martial institution would be like Yi-Chen, traveling alone, killing enemies, and taking their wealth. Then he would go in and explore the ruins and gain a lot. But if he was unlucky, he might be killed by the enemies, or he might not find any opportunities at all. So, he would have to live a hard life. Therefore, a martial school could not be supported by one person. Most of the martial schools wanted to develop, they needed a spirit vein. Only with a spirit vein could they have enough spirit stones, and with spirit stones, they could pay salaries. In the Flowing Cloud sect, an outer elder would need hundreds of low-grade spirit stones a month, and an inner elder would need thousands of low-grade spirit stones and dozens of medium-grade spirit stones a month. Adding some attendants, core disciples, inner disciples, and outer disciples, they would need at least hundreds of thousands of low-grade spirit stones a month, which would be around 1 or 2 million a year. Yi-Chen had given the Flowing Cloud sect millions of low-grade spirit stones, but could only last them for a few years. According to Yi-Chen's knowledge, a grade 7 martial school could not survive without 5 million low-grade spirit stones and 200,000 medium-grade spirit stones a year. A top grade 7 martial school would need 7 or 8 million spirit stones a year, and a grade 6 martial school would need even more. Without 30 or 40 million low-grade spirit stones and millions of medium-grade spirit stones a year, they would need nothing. If they could not even give out normal spirit stones, then who would want to join the martial school? Being rich was the symbol of a powerful martial school. They could not let everyone go out to earn spirit stones, could they? The high-grade, low-grade spirit veins would produce about 1% of the total mid-grade spirit stones, while the top low-grade spirit veins would produce 5%. Therefore, it was not strange for 2 top grade 7 martial schools and 2 top grade 8 martial schools to fight for a top low-grade spirit vein. In the mountains, beautiful light waves shone everywhere. From time to time, people would be blown into pieces and killed on the spot. That kind of brutal scene was very spectacular and shocking. The battles between rank 7 and 8 martial schools are already this brutal. The battles between rank 5 martial schools would be 10 times more brutal. A rank 5 martial institution was different from a rank 7 or 8 martial institution. The main fighting force was made up of astral-reaching realm warriors. Hundreds or even thousands of astral-reaching realm warriors were battling against each other. Even Sea of Souls realm warriors would have to back off, because one wrong move could lead to instant death. Seeing this battle, Yi Chun could not help but worry about the Dragon God Celestial Palace. Its opponents were the top 4 rank 5 martial schools. Even if they were individually weaker than the Dragon God Celestial Palace, once they combined, their overall power would be more powerful than the Dragon God Celestial Palace. Last time, the leader of the White Dragon Palace, Missouri Foam, and Long Bai had told him that the Dragon God Celestial Palace had lost 300 Astral Reaching Realm Warriors and 20 Sea of Souls Realm Warriors. Yi Chun decided that once the Dragon God Celestial Palace was in danger, he would definitely go and help. Although one's personal power would not make a difference in the battle between rank 5 martial schools, helping and not helping were 2 different concepts. Helping in a time of need would be much more valuable than adding flowers to a brocade. If it were someone else, they would probably try to take the Spirit Fountain. The top low-rank Spirit Fountain was not something that Yi Chun wanted because he did not need low-rank Spirit Stones or mid-rank Spirit Stones. But if there was a martial school behind him, then it would be different. Fortunately, Yi Chun would not do such a thing. His sword art was righteous. If the martial school lacked Spirit Stones, he could help find them and would not try to take other people's harvest. Quietly, Yi Chun rode his flying puppet and left the area. Finally left. Yi Chun did not hide his tracks, so the astral-reaching realm warriors below had basically seen Yi Chun. They were afraid that Yi Chun would ignore his identity and take the Spirit Fountain for himself. If he really did that, then they would have no choice but to hand it over. Fortunately, it did not happen. Kill. As soon as Yi Chun left, these astral-reaching realm warriors let loose and started to fight against the astral-reaching realm warriors. Blood rained everywhere. After leaving the White Mystery Nation, Yi Chun specially went to the Murong family. Murong Qingcheng was still in closed-up training. She had been wounded too badly last time. Forcefully using her demon power essence had almost shattered her demon power ocean, which would not be healed in a short period of time. After staying in the Murong family for a day, Yi Chun returned to the Yi family in the Misty Mountain. Once there, Yi Chun learned that the leader of the White Dragon Palace, Missouri Foam, had already left the South Ridra Martial School. The situation in the East Shallow Ocean was not looking good for the Dragon God Celestial Palace. If it reached a certain point, they might have to call back most of the people they had set up in the true Spirit Continent. Yi Chun had told Long Bai that if she needed him, he could go over any time. On this day, Yi Chun started to train the defensive sword spell. Training the defensive sword spell required a top-rank great sword in addition to soul power, because only top-rank great swords could be imprinted with the soul mark. Although mid-rank great swords could be used as well, their control would not be as good as top-rank great swords, which would reduce their power. The defensive sword spell was divided into 3 levels. The first level was the most basic defensive sword spell, which allowed the user to control the flying sword and kill the enemies from a distance. The more powerful the soul power, the further the distance. The second level allowed the user to control the sword as if it was his own arm. Within 100 steps, he could kill the enemies with just a thought. Moreover, the flying speed was even faster than the first level. The third level was where the true profoundness of the defensive sword spell lay. It allowed the user to split Jin Yuan into flying swords. Once trained to the highest level, the user would be able to kill the enemies with 100 swords. Beside the lake in the inner courtyard, go. With a sword finger on his right hand, the emerald longsword on Yi Chun's waist flew out of its scabbard automatically. Like a beam of emerald light, it instantly pierced through the fake mountain hundreds of steps away. Its speed was even more impressive than the spiritual sword. Of course, it was not because the defensive sword spell was powerful to this extent. What truly made the defensive sword spell powerful was Yi Chun's soul power. His soul power was 5 times that of normal people. Controlling the flying sword to kill the enemies was as easy as eating or drinking. It was only the first level, but he could already kill the enemies with just a thought. Chapter 660. It was only a straight line attack, but Yi Chun was still not satisfied. He pushed his soul power, and his sword finger drew an arc in the air before pulling back. Shoo! The emerald light was the same as Yi Chun's sword finger. After drawing an arc in the air, it pierced through the fake mountain for the second time. Its speed was so fast that it was only a little bit slower than a straight line attack. Then, Yi Chen's sword finger kept on moving. The emerald light pierced through the fake mountain from different angles. No one knew how many times it had pierced through. Eventually, the fake mountain that looked like a hornet's nest could not handle the huge weight anymore and collapsed immediately. Come back. Yi Chen pulled his sword finger back, and the emerald light turned into a sword, which was put back into the scabbard. My soul power is 5 times more powerful than normal people. I have only trained the defensive sword spell to the 1st level, and I have already reached the 2nd level. Plus, my flying speed is even faster than Sidhu Hao's 2nd level, and my attacking power is even more powerful. I can basically control it like my own arm. If Sidhu Hao saw Yi Chen controlling the flying sword, he would definitely be shocked. If the 1st level was already better than his 2nd level, then wouldn't the 2nd level be even better? However, the 1st level is still the 1st level after all. Controlling the flying sword is still a bit stiff, and the turning is not natural enough. If I encounter a top warrior, I would be easily found out. After thinking about it, Yi Chen decided not to train the 2nd level for now. His soul power was very powerful, and there was still room for improvement in the 1st level. When he reached the point where he could no longer make any progress, then he would train the 2nd level of the defensive sword spell. The effect should be much better then. A couple of days had passed, and Yi Chen was improving every day. He had to admit that the defensive sword spell seemed to have been created just for him. With his powerful soul power, training the defensive sword spell was just a little bit harder than eating or drinking. Of course, this was only the 1st level, and the 2nd level would probably not be this easy. On this day, 4 young girls came to the Yi family. The girl on the left was about 25 or 26 years old. She was wearing a green dress and had a long sword on her waist. She looked very pretty, and her eyes were like cold stars. Looking closely, she even looked a bit similar to Yi Chen. Normally, people who looked a bit similar should be related by blood. The girl in green was none other than Yi Chen's 4th uncle's daughter, Yi Xian. Yi Chen's father, Yi Tianhao, and his 4th uncle Yi Wenhao already looked 50 to 60% similar. Therefore, their names were only 1 word apart. As the 4th uncle's daughter, it was not strange for Yi Xian to look a bit similar to Yi Chen. Yi Xian had reached the astral reaching realm last year, and was the 4th person in the Yi family to reach the astral reaching realm. The first one was Yi Chen, and the 2nd and 3rd were his parents. Before Yi Chen's rise, Yi Xian was the number 1 martial genius of the Yi family, so it was natural for her to have this achievement. The 3 young women walking next to Yi Xian were all around 25 years old. The first one on the right was a woman in red. She had a beautiful face and a sexy body. There was a black whip wrapped around her waist, and when she walked, her body swayed in the wind, which was quite eye-catching. The second one on Yi Xian's right was not as pretty as Yi Xian and the girl in red, but she looked extra pretty. Her eyebrows were curved, and her eyes were watery. The first impression that she gave people was that she wanted to protect her and not let her suffer even a little bit, as if it would be a huge sin to let her suffer. The third one was not any weaker than Yi Xian in terms of appearance. She looked a bit cold, but there was also a bit of arrogance in that coldness. She was the tallest one among the 4, and had a thin willow sword on her waist. The scabbard was decorated with tiny gemstones, which looked very bright. The first 3 were all at the early astral reaching realm, while the cold-looking girl was at the mid-astral reaching realm. I wonder if I can see your cousin this time. I have been here a couple of times already, and as long as I can see him, I will be satisfied. The red-clothed woman was filled with anticipation, but there was a trace of nervousness in her expression. She was like a shy girl who was about to see her sweetheart. If someone who was familiar with the red-clothed girl saw her like this, they would definitely be dumbfounded. This was because in the eyes of outsiders, the red-clothed girl had always been spoiled and unreasonable by nature. Yi Xian shook her head helplessly. These 3 were all her good friends, and they all had special backgrounds. The girl in red was called Di Hongyin, and she was the princess of the Red Moon Nation, a mid-ranked country in the South River region. Her status was even higher than the head disciple of a rank 7 martial institution. The pretty-looking girl was Lan Cui, a young lady from a rank 7 family in the Sky Serpent Nation, who also had a high status. The one with the highest status was the cold-looking girl, Luo Baishuang. She was a top disciple from the rank 6 martial institution, the Sunset Martial School, and her cultivation was one small realm higher than theirs. Among the three, she had met Lan Tsuitsue first, and the friendship between the two was very pure. As for Di Hongyin and Luo Baishuang, it was only because of Yi Chan that they started to get to know each other. But as time went on, after going through a couple of life and death situations together, this impure friendship started to become pure as well. Otherwise, Yi Xian would not spend so much time with them and bring them to the Yi family as guests. But of course, friendship aside, when the three were with Yi Xian, they still talked about Yi Chen a lot. My cousin always goes to the Sky Martial region, and every time he goes, it would be for a long time. Even I have only seen him a couple of times. Yi Xian was not at home all the time, so she rarely saw Yi Chen. The Sky Martial region is a holy place for all the martial geniuses. Normal martial geniuses would not even have a right to go there. But your cousin is even more powerful. He is the #1 warrior just below the top 5 young warriors. He is the only young warrior in the master-level warrior ranking besides the top 5 young warriors. Di Hongyin could not help but think about it. If she knew that Yi Chen had already beaten Lu Xiaoyu and Xia Hozuan had indirectly beaten Xiao Chuha, she would probably go crazy. Lan Tsuitsue blushed and said in a small voice, "Yi Xian, can you take us to your cousin's yard for a look?" No. Yi Xian rejected right away. In the Yi family, which one of them did not see Yi Chen as a legend? She was both respectful and scared of Yi Chen, so she would not dare to bring anyone into Yi Chen's yard. But I can take you to the Wind Pavilion. You can see my cousin's yard from there. Yi Xian said again. All right, take us there now. Di Hongyin said eagerly. The Wind Pavilion was one of the tallest buildings in the Yi family. It could look over half of the entire Yi family. Yi Chen's yard was the biggest in the Yi family. It was covered in green trees, blocking most of the buildings and bedrooms. However, the lake and the open space next to it were not blocked at all. Tap, tap, tap. Footsteps were heard as Yi Xian and the other three arrived at the 9th floor of the pavilion. That is my cousin's yard. Yi Xian walked to the wide window and pointed at Yi Chen's yard. Strangely, the four suddenly quieted down, not even daring to breathe. In Chunxi's field of vision, a blue-clothed young man was cultivating a unique sword technique at the side of the lake. With the point of his sword, an emerald-green ray of light shot out, and it fluttered and circled in the sky above the lake before drawing out a myriad of strands of light that were extremely beautiful and swift. This young man looked even younger than them, just in his early 20s. But everyone who had seen his picture would know that this was Yi Chen. He was 26 years old this year, and the reason why he looked so young was because he had reached the astral reaching realm when he was 19 and reached the seas of Soul's realm when he was 24. His appearance had been stagnant for many years, as if time could not do anything to him. Your cousin is at home. Di Hongyin covered her mouth while Lan Tsuitsue and Luo Baishuang's breathing increased. Yeah, Yi Xian nodded dumbly. To be honest, Yi Xian and Yi Chen did not have much contact with each other, since they were always out. It would be luck if they could run into each other in the Yi family, and it would only happen 2 or 3 times a year. Looking at Yi Chen from afar, Yi Xian did not know what she was feeling. Before Yi Chen's rise, her attitude towards Yi Chen was very cold. Although she was not as hostile towards him as Yi Tang and Yi Ming, she would not be too close to him either. Moreover, because of Ji Shuyan, her relationship with Yi Chen was very tense. Back then, she did not care, because she was the #1 martial genius of the Yi family, and she was not on the same path as Yi Chen. However, since then, Yi Chen had started to rise. During the family gathering, Yi Chen shocked everyone and won the first place. At the banquet of the head disciple, young Master Emerald, he showed his brilliance and defeated the stone man Sherpatian. Then, in the Heaven Dream ancient place, he shocked the whole world and became the #1 martial genius of the 9 nations, beating down the head disciple, young Master Emerald, young Master North Snow from the North Snow Martial Academy, and the other martial geniuses. All of a sudden, Yi Chun became the king, and no one dared to compete with him. If this was already shocking enough, then the next one would be a legend. In a hidden dragon rank competition that was held once every 3 years, Yi Chun had become a shining star. This star was even brighter than the sun, as he had beaten all the top martial geniuses that Yi Xian could not even imagine. He had stepped on their dead bodies and reached the top, becoming the #1 martial genius of the South River region. Just when everyone thought that Yi Chen would stop there, he had become one of the top young warriors in the South River region, just like Li Shaoyan, Jing Aoshuan, and Chu Zhongtian. It was not over yet. In the new tea gathering, Yi Chen had finally won the first place, and had beaten the uninvited guest from the East region with his own power. Since then, Yi Chen had become known by everyone in the South River region. He had become the leader of the martial geniuses, the legend of the whole South River region. It was as if he would not give up until he scared people to death. What had happened before seemed to be just small fights for Yi Chen, and the stage was not big enough for him. He had come to the Sky Martial region as the #1 warrior of a young generation in the South River region, starting a new journey and beginning a glorious life. In just a couple of years, he had become the #1 warrior just below the top 5 young warriors. He had become one of the most famous martial geniuses of the whole true spirit continent. His fame could no longer be described by one region or one country, but by the whole continent, dozens of regions, and countless countries. Right then, Yi Chen was no longer a legend, but a myth. As a member of the Yi family, Yi Xian knew better than anyone else that everyone in the South River region would want to get on Yi Chen's good side. Those rank 6 martial institutions were unbelievably powerful in the eyes of normal people, but a lot of people knew that as long as Yi Chen wanted to, he could destroy all of them in one night. Everyone in the South River region was looking up at Yi Chen. He was not only the #1 warrior of the young generation, but also the king of the whole South River region. Once the king was angry, everyone would tremble, including the top 4 countries, top 10 mid-sized countries, 36 small countries, and countless martial institutions. Because of Yi Chen, the Yi family and the Sky Cloud Martial School had a very high status in the whole South River region. A lot of royal families hoped that their children could enter the Sky Cloud Martial School and become their disciples. Some of them even wanted their daughters to marry into the Yi family, even if it was a son of a concubine. If they could marry a direct descendant of the Yi family, it would be a blessing that they had cultivated for 8 lifetimes. Once they had a good relationship with the Yi family, all of the powerful forces in the whole South River region would give them some face. Although the Yi family did not want to get involved with so many powerful forces, there would always be 1 or 2 exceptions. For example, there was a princess from a mid-sized country who married into the Yi family, and the little princess of the Windy Nation was also engaged to a direct descendant of the Yi family. The appearance of Yi Chen had saved thousands of years of hard work for the Yi family. Even the older generation had to respect and fear Yi Chen at the same time. It was a change brought about by power. Even if they were related by blood, it would still be useless. Within the Yi family, only the leader of the family, Yi Tianhao, had the closest relationship with Yi Chen, so it would not be affected too much. Yi Xian, can you introduce me to your cousin? The cold and arrogant Luo Baishuang suddenly said. Yi Xian came back to her senses and shook her head. Don't even think about it. My cousin already has a girlfriend, and you all know her. It is Murong Qingcheng. Then, I can be his concubine. Di Hongyin was not willing to accept it. Right then, Yi Chen pointed out his finger, and his long sword returned to its scabbard. He turned his head and looked at the 9th floor of the Wind Pavilion. All of a sudden, all 4 of them stopped breathing. Chapter 661. If it were only a normal Sea of Souls realm warrior looking at them, they would not have stopped breathing, unless the warrior had done on purpose. But Yi Chen had only casually glanced at them, and his expression was not cold at all. It was just like a senior looking at a junior. But the pressure of a senior was way too powerful. It was just a normal glance, but it had already numbed their bodies. If Yi Chen had done it on purpose, they might have been scared out of their wits. Yi Chen naturally did not do it on purpose. He had just finished training his defensive sword spell, so a wave of sword intent was still lingering. Even if it was just a strand of it, it was enough to make the four feel uncomfortable. After all, no one in the world could have such a powerful sword intent at the Sea of Souls realm. Plus, Yi Chun had accepted the title of Sword Master, so he had a kind of prestige that could not be violated. Yi Xian, is this your friend? Yi Chun had let go of some of his unhappiness a long time ago. Back then, Yi Xian was only a 14 or 15-year-old girl and did not have any schemes. Not to mention Yi Xian, even his uncle Yi Batian had been forgotten by Yi Chun. As a sword master, one should not be calculative, but one should also be decisive in killing. One should know who was the enemy and who was not. As Yi Xian's cousin, if he did not care about them after noticing them, it would only hurt Yi Xian's feelings. Therefore, Yi Chun decided to ask about them. Indeed, a joyful expression flashed through Yi Xian's face as she nodded. Yes, cousin Yi Chun. Come here. Hearing him, the four jumped down from the wind pavilion and carefully arrived at Yi Chen's yard. Right then, even Di Hongyin, who is usually aggressive, seemed very cautious as well. Her small hands were holding onto the corner of her clothes. Luo Baishuang and Lan Tsue's eyes were full of nervousness. Don't be nervous. I am about the same age as you guys. Yi Chun chuckled as the remaining sword intent disappeared completely. Of course I am nervous. Di Hongyin mumbled to herself. Lan Tsue asked carefully, Brother Yi, what kind of sword spell did you just train? Can your sword fly out? She didn't know how to address Yi Chun. Fortunately, she was 1 year younger than Yi Chun, so she just called him Big Brother Yi. Yi Chun said, this is the Imperial Sword Technique. It requires soul power to control. Sword control technique? Yi Xian and the other three looked confused. They were unfamiliar with this sword art and had never heard of it before. Flying on a sword, taking a person's head from 1,000 miles away. You can understand it this way. After mastering the Imperial Sword Technique, Yi Chun could already fly on his sword. Due to his powerful soul force, the speed of his flying sword was even faster than the sword light flight technique. This was because the speed of the flying sword was faster than most attacks, which was something that the sword light flight technique could not achieve at the moment. Hearing Yi Chen's words, the eyes of the four brightened, and an image naturally appeared in their minds. A peerless swordsman was riding on a flying sword, flying elegantly and fiercely. Without a doubt, the image of the swordsman was Yi Chun. It is very rare for you to be able to reach the astral reaching realm at such a young age. If your willpower is strong enough, it would not be impossible for you to reach the Sea of Souls realm. Yi Chun did not use the standard of the Sky Martial region to treat the four, since those who could appear in the Sky Martial region were all insane martial geniuses. There might not even be one in 100 million. But in the South Ridra region, the four of them were already considered top martial geniuses, and it was not impossible for them to reach the Sea of Souls realm. Willpower? Doesn't it need talent? Luo Baishuang asked. Yi Chun shook his head. Talent can help you reach the astral reaching realm, but reaching the Sea of Souls realm will be extremely difficult. When you fail to make any progress for countless times, you will start to waver and lose your confidence. Then, you will be satisfied with your current cultivation and lose your ambition. Not having talent is not scary, but having your confidence shaken and having no ambition is the scariest thing. When your willpower is strong enough, then even if your talent is a bit weaker, it will still be okay, because once you reach the astral reaching realm, everyone will be on the same starting line. People with a strong willpower will have a much higher chance of success than geniuses with less confidence. The talent that Yi Chun mentioned was relative to their level. If it were those martial geniuses in the Sky Martial region, it would indeed be insane. Even if they did not have enough willpower, they would still be able to reach the Sea of Souls realm. But whether it was the Sea of Souls realm or the astral reaching realm, one would still need the willpower in the end. Hearing him, Yi Xian and the other three seemed to be thinking about something. Besides Yi Xian, who knew a lot about Yi Chun in the beginning, Luo Baishuang and the other two had all heard about how Yi Chun was not that amazing at the beginning. Since he was able to achieve so much, he must have an unimaginable willpower. If Yi Chun were just an astral-reaching realm warrior like them, then they would not think that way. But in their eyes, Yi Chun was a legend. Whatever he said, it would not be wrong. After that, Yi Chun taught them a little bit. Yi Xian and Luo Baishuang trained sword arts, so they did not know much about the last few top-rank Earthrealm sword arts. But, after Yi Chen's teaching, they were suddenly enlightened. On the other hand, Di Hongyin and Lan Suicue trained a whip art and a palm art respectively. Yi Chen also taught them a little bit, and they learned no less than Yi Xian and Luo Baishuang. It should not be forgotten that Yi Chun was unrivaled in terms of martial arts training. Although he mainly trained sword arts, any martial arts he learned would be easy to master. Plus, top-rank Earthrealm martial arts were not as powerful as profound sense martial arts after all, which were way easier. As the days passed by, Yi Chen had soon trained to the peak of the first level of the defensive sword spell. Within 100 steps, he could cut off dozens of flies' wings with a single thought. On the other hand, Luo Baishuang and the other two rarely got to see Yi Chen in person, so they refused to leave the Yi family. Yi Xian could not get rid of them no matter how hard she tried. Of course, they did not dare to disturb Yi Chen too much. Every 3 to 4 days, they would only ask to see Yi Chen with the excuse of learning martial arts. To them, Yi Chen was already an extravagant hope, so it should not be a problem for them to see him. Just like that, a month had passed, and it was already late October. Yi Chen left the Yi family and flew towards the Murong family. Seeing that Yi Chen had left, Luo Baishuang and the other two finally felt too embarrassed to stay any longer, so they left together. The Yi family was not far from the Murong family, but it was still a few million miles away. On the way, Yi Chen passed by a big city in the Black Dragon Empire, the Black Line City. With a thought, Yi Chen directed his flying puppet to fly down. Inside the pavilion, there were a lot of warriors lining up in front of the gate. The second master level warrior ranking had been released a week ago, and every day there would be a huge amount of people coming to buy it. The first day had the most people, and then the following days, the number would decrease. It had only been a week, but if one wanted to buy the ranking, they would still have to line up. One had to admit that the ranking had already become a symbol of the whole, true spirit continent. If one had not seen the ranking before, they would be too embarrassed to talk to others, since it would be very easy to be looked down upon. This year, there are indeed a lot of young warriors in the ranking. Shangwan Fei, Helian Hua, Situ Hao, Yin Fengfeng, Bai Minghui, Xiao Chuha, Lu Xiaoyu, Xiao Hozuan, Duguju by Wu Shue. So many. What? Yi Chen is ranked number 1, and his title is Swordmaster. Yi Chen, Swordmaster? Some of the people who had not bought it, yet heard people mumbling. Their eyes widened as they dug their ears, thinking that they might be hearing things. Are you sure? Someone asked hurriedly. Of course I am. The number 1 is indeed Yi Chen, and his title is Swordmaster. The person who was talking said with a bit of shock, "Boss, give me a copy." All of a sudden, the area around the pavilion was heated up. Swordmaster Yi Chen, the number 1 on the ranking. This news was just too shocking. Those who had not bought it yet were extremely anxious, wishing that they could go and grab one for themselves. All right, don't worry, everyone will get one. The owner of the pavilion was so busy that his forehead was covered in sweat. After queuing for a while, Yi Chen also managed to buy a master-level warrior ranking book. Before he left, someone noticed him and was immediately dumbfounded. However, when he came back to his senses, Yi Chen had already left. I think I just saw Yi Chen. High up in the sky, Yi Chen sat on his flying puppet. Flipping to the first page, Yi Chen saw his own name. Number 1 on the ranking, Swordmaster Yi Chen. This person is a rare sword art martial genius. At the age of 26, he made it to the top of the ranking, and his title is Swordmaster. On September 18th, he beat Lu Xiaoyu in Duguju, and on September 25th, he beat Xiao Hozuan in the Turtle Mountain. After the evaluation of dozens of our elders, he has been ranked as the number 1 on the ranking, and his title is Swordmaster. This title is still to be decided, but we all think that the title will definitely belong to him. The pavilion had a very high evaluation for Yi Chen, and their tone was very certain. He actually called me Swordmaster? Yi Chen was a bit surprised. Gao Changtian calling him Swordmaster was just giving him a title, which was different from the pavilion calling him Swordmaster. At least, the latter would be more powerful than the former. So, whether or not the leader of the pavilion was involved would be a mystery. Without paying too much attention to it, Yi Chun continued to flip to the back. There were indeed a lot of young warriors in the ranking this time. There were 17 of them, which was close to 1/4 of the ranking. It was quite a high ratio. Among them, Dugaju was ranked 4th, the Axemaster was 2nd, Su Yuan was 3rd, Xie Baiting was 6th, and Bai Wuxiwe was still the 7th. The title of Swordmaster has landed on me just like that. It seems like I'll have to work hard. Closing the book, Yi Chun smiled lightly. This is ridiculous. What is wrong with the pavilion? They put our headmaster in 2nd place. What right does that Yi Chun have to be at the top? In the Surreal Martial School, a lot of the disciples were very upset, and some of the elders looked angry as well. Inside the headmaster's palace, the Axemaster Lin Rohai closed his book, Swordmaster. I am afraid it will not be for long. Those old guys are not easy to deal with. They don't care about the ranking, but the title of Swordmaster is something they have to care about. As the headmaster of the Surreal Martial School, it is not appropriate for me to make a move, but it is not necessary for me to make a move either. In the middle of a mountain of swords, a white-haired elder slowly spat out a mouthful of white mist. The mist was like a blade, flashing across the sky like a piece of white silk. Crack! A mountain that was as straight as a sword had been cut in half, and the cut was as smooth as a mirror. It seems like after a long time, the martial world no longer cares about us. They even gave us the title of Swordmaster so easily. The white-haired elder had a calm look in his eyes. Every move he made, the plants around him would shake, as if they were sharp swords. If any sword artist came here, they would definitely be terrified. Chapter 662. As soon as the 2nd ranking was released, the whole True Spirit continent was shocked. No one had expected Yi Chun to be ranked 1st, since the former 1st and 2nd rankers, Axemaster Lin Rohai and Earth Sword Master Su Yuan, were not to be trifled with. For a young man who was not even 30 years old to push them down, it would be too exaggerated. If being ranked 1st in the ranking was exaggerated, then the title of Swordmaster would be ridiculous. If it were just saying that Yi Chun was the Swordmaster, it would still be acceptable. However, an organization as big as the Knowledge Pavilion had unanimously agreed that Yi Chun was the Swordmaster. If this was not ridiculous, then what was? Therefore, a lot of people started to doubt the accuracy of the Knowledge Pavilion. As for whether they were right or not, it would be revealed soon. Those famous sword artists of their eras would not be indifferent to the title of Swordmaster. The challenge that Yi Chun would have to face would be very serious. When Yi Chun arrived at the Morong family, Morong Qingsheng had just come out of seclusion for a couple of days. Her wounds had already been healed. Although she had to train for half a year to recover, it was not without its benefits. Because her body had been wounded by the demonic power essence, it had strengthened her demonic body to the 3rd step. In terms of physical defense, it was even more powerful than Yi Chen's 3rd step spirit body. In addition, Murong Qingsheng had also refined a huge amount of demonic power essence, allowing her cultivation to skyrocket. She had successfully broken through to late sea of Soul Realm, which was 1 step ahead of Yi Chun. However, this breakthrough had also depleted the demonic power essence inside her body. She was afraid that she would only be able to reach half-step King Warrior level at most. Once that happened, she would have to rely on herself. The demonic power in the True Spirit continent was extremely rare, and it would be several times more difficult for her to reach life and death realm. With her demonic body reaching the 3rd step and her cultivation reaching late sea of Soul Realm, Murong Qingqing's power had increased by several folds. Before, using the Sky Demon Finger would be a huge burden, but now, she could use it dozens of times in a row without any problem. Moreover, during her breakthrough to late sea of Soul Realm, Murong Qingsheng had experienced the state of being one with the world for a short period of time. Her few profound sense martial arts had all reached 80% completion, and her Dark Sky Curtain had also reached completion, increasing its defensive power. She had already started to think about creating her own profound sense martial art. This was a black ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see. The waves surged. The sea was dotted with islands. Basically, there would be an island every few hundred or thousand kilometers. Looking down from above, one could see that the Black Sea was densely packed with islands. It was dozens of times denser than the surrounding seas. There were even people mining resources on some of the islands. The miners on the southern island had a simple dragon pattern embroidered on their clothes. It was only a few strokes, but it gave off a majestic aura. However, the miners on the northern island did not have the same pattern embroidered on their clothes. Some had a black octopus, some had a gale pattern, some had a whirlpool pattern, and some had a giant eagle pattern. Their cultivation was not high, and they were basically all at the condensing reality realm. Shio shio, shio shio. From the south, densely packed figures shot over. As they got closer and closer, they could see that they were all wearing azure robes with a huge dragon pattern embroidered on them. The people living in this area knew very well that these people were the people of Dragon God, Celestial Palace's Azure Dragon Hall. Azure Dragon Hall was the head of the 5 great halls, and its overall strength was the highest. Stop! The leader was tall and sturdy, with tiger-like eyes and thick eyebrows. He carried a huge blade on his back, the hilt of which was as long as an arm. He was the deputy leader of the Azure Dragon Hall, Huanhai. His cultivation base was at the peak of Late Sea of Soul Realm, and his strength was not much weaker than the leader of the Yellow Dragon Hall, Zhang Jingguan. This time, he had led hundreds of people here because he had received a message. The enemy force, Whirlwind Gate, would be escorting a batch of resources through this area. What they needed to do was to kill the enemy and seize the resources. Everyone, spread out and prepare for the ambush. Wait for my command and attack. Don't let a single one escape. Huanhai said loudly. Yes. Among these hundreds of people, there were more than 30 Sea of Souls Realm warriors. Among them, 15 were at Early Sea of Souls Realm, 10 were at Mid Sea of Souls Realm, and 7 were at Late Sea of Souls Realm. The rest were all astral reaching realm warriors. With such a powerful force, it would be enough to wipe out all of the rank 6 martial institutions in the whole South River region. Deputy Hu, will there be any danger? A gloomy middle-aged man walked out from Huanhai's side. This person was the former deputy of Yellow Dragon Hall, Yao Yifeng. After Yao Yifeng was captured by Zhang Jingguan, he was sent to Dragon God Celestial Palace. Since Dragon King was already in seclusion at that time, and the 4 great powers were getting restless, the upper echelons of Dragon God Celestial Palace allowed Yao Yifeng to atone for his crimes with meritorious service and sent him to Blood Battle Ocean to temporarily join Azure Dragon Hall. Of course, the upper echelons of Dragon God Celestial Palace were also afraid that Yao Yifeng would harbor resentment and do something bad to the palace. Therefore, although they removed the yellow dragon sealing great art from his body, they also added another restriction. This restriction wouldn't affect his strength, but could control him. As long as he dared to rebel, the restriction would activate, and he would immediately die without a burial. After joining Azure Dragon Hall, Yao Yifeng didn't make any abnormal movements. He fought a few bloody battles and killed many enemies, which made the upper echelons of Dragon God Celestial Palace feel relieved. Originally, he was only a combat attendant of Azure Dragon Hall, but now he was promoted to a chief attendant. Once Dragon God Celestial Palace completely trusted him, it wouldn't be impossible for him to be promoted to a deputy. Huanhai waved his hand. This operation is extremely secretive. Less than 5 people know about it in advance. So don't worry. It's absolutely safe. Only the Hall Master and a few deputies knew about this kind of top-secret operation. Even chief attendants didn't have the qualifications to know. It's best if it's absolutely safe. Our Dragon God Celestial Palace's losses have been too disastrous. A cold light flickered in Yao Yifeng's eyes as he sighed. They'll pay a disastrous price. Huanhai's expression was fierce. The ambush was quickly carried out. In a short while, not a single Azure Dragon Hall member could be seen. Gales blew past, and the seawater surged violently. Time passed slowly. After an unknown amount of time, the Azure Dragon Hall members hiding in the seawater or on the islands gradually became anxious. Why aren't they here yet? Could it be that they found out? Don't jinx it. Sweat, I'm just saying. Don't take it seriously. Another short while passed. Suddenly, screams resounded. Not good. We've been counter-ambushed. In the sky and in the sea, densely packed figures surrounded them. At a glance, the number of people on each side was not much less than theirs. Added together, it was more than 3 times their number. Once they were surrounded, it was very likely that none of them would be able to escape. Impossible. How'd they know? Hu Wenhai turned pale with fright. Since they couldn't easily release their soul power during the ambush, it would be tantamount to telling others that they were lying in ambush. Therefore, the enemies were only seen dozens of li away. Almost subconsciously, Hu Wenhai activated his soul power and spread it out. Within his soul power perception, there were enemies in every direction. There were Whirlwind Gate, Black King Gate, Sky Eagle Cult, and Waterwave Sect. The speed of these 4 sides was extremely fast. In a few blinks, they were still dozens of li away, but in a few blinks, they were already less than 20 li away. Operation failed. Break out at full force. Hu Wenhai made a prompt decision and roared. Walala! Azure Dragon Hall's forces gathered in 4 directions. Under Hu Wenhai's lead, they charged toward the southeast like a sharp blade. Can you escape? Kill! An ominous glint appeared in the leader's eyes. With a wave of his hand, countless attacks rained down on Azure Dragon Hall's forces. The speed of the attacks was much faster than their flying speed. In the next instant, the outermost forces of Azure Dragon Hall were torn apart. Roughly speaking, the number of casualties was no less than 50. And this was just the first round of attacks. If there were a few more rounds, the consequences would be unimaginable. Kill our way out. Hu Wenhai's eyes were bloodshot. Right in front of him was the Waterwave Sect. Kill. Killing 1 is 1. Killing 2 is a profit. Boom. 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 Azure Dragon Hall's forces' eyes were all bloodshot. The outermost forces raised their shields one after another, blocking the attacks from the right, left, and rear. Then, all of them began to circulate their Zhen Yuan, sending waves of Zhen Yuan toward the Waterwave Sect. Formation, water, curtain, skyflower. The majority of Waterwave Sect's people cultivated water-attributed martial arts. In the ocean, they were always successful. The leader of Waterwave Sect formed seals with both hands, and the people behind him also did the same. In the next instant, a huge water wall condensed in front of them. It was several thousand meters long, several thousand meters tall, and 100 meters thick, blocking the attacks from the Azure Dragon Hall's forces. The water wall was in tatters. It was constantly being destroyed and repaired, but it didn't collapse. Yao Yifeng, Zuo Heng, Xiang Yihui. The 6 of you, work with me to break through the water wall and kill our way into Waterwave Sect's forces. Hu Wenhai knew that only by killing his way into the enemy's midst would there be any hope of breaking out. Otherwise, they would be wrapped up like dumplings sooner or later. All right, the others replied solemnly. Mad Wave Chop, Blazing Spear. 7 attacks landed on the water wall, and it finally exploded, turning into thousands of water pillars that shot out in all directions. Charge! Hu Wenhai took the lead and charged. The machete in his hand emitted a huge white blade aura that was unstoppable. Hu Wenhai, you're dead for sure this time. The Waterwave Sect's forces gathered together. Facing the Azure Dragon Hall's assault, they were disdainful. If they couldn't even kill their opponents like this, they might as well commit suicide. Rumble. A huge water ball condensed and shot toward Hu Wenhai and the Azure Dragon Hall's forces behind him. At this moment, Yao Yifeng, intentionally or not, dashed to the right, dodging the water ball's attack. Plum. The combined attack from hundreds of Waterwave Sect's forces was too fierce. Hu Wenhai was the first to fall, blasted into pieces, while the Azure Dragon Hall's forces behind him had lost at least a third of their forces. As for the remaining, they were falling one after another. They simply couldn't block the combined attack of the other 3 forces. Follow me, charge out. Yao Yifeng, led the remaining dozens of people and broke out of the water wave sect's encirclement. After losing half of their forces, they actually succeeded. Chapter 663. Not only did we kill a large number of Azure Dragonhall's people, we even killed Azure Dragonhall's deputy, who went high. The people of the four sects didn't chase after Yao Yifeng's group. Instead, they all stopped and laughed heartily. The leader of Waterwave sect smiled. In these few years, the number of Dragon God Celestial Palaces, people who died in our hands, should be more than 1,000. I like to see how long Dragon God Celestial Palace can last. Let's see whether they nurture experts faster or we kill them faster. 5th grade sects nurtured astral-reaching experts dozens of times faster than 6th grade sections. It should be known that a 6th grade sect had tens of thousands of people, from elders to janitor disciples. Meanwhile, a 5th grade sect would have hundreds of thousands of people. A peak 5th grade sect like Dragon God Celestial Palace already had more than 1 million people. As long as there were enough resources, astral-reaching experts would be endless, and Sea of Soul Realm experts could be easily produced as well. After all, those who could enter 5th grade sects were all geniuses with decent innate talents. The ratio of experts produced by 5th grade sects was extremely high. However, 5th grade sects also had a limit. If their experts continued to die like this, it wouldn't take more than a few years for their vitality to be greatly damaged. In less than 10 years, there would be a gap between the younger generation and the younger generation. Once a gap appeared, it would be a sign of decline. We can only blame Dragon God Celestial Palace for being too powerful. Our 4 sects only occupy 40% of Eastern Shallow Ocean's resources, while Dragon God Celestial Palace occupies 50%. In the long run, we'll never be able to catch up to Dragon God Celestial Palace. We don't have as many experts either. The leader of Whirlwind Gate caressed the blade in his hand, his gaze cold. All right, this encirclement is over. Dragon God Celestial Palace has suffered a disastrous loss. I don't think they'll make any big movements in the near future. Let's go back and report. Sky Eagle Cult's people left in the sky. Soon after, Waterwave Sect, Black King Gate, and Whirlwind Gate's people also left, leaving behind a blood-dyed ocean and hundreds of mutilated corpses. Several thousand li away, Yao Yifeng and dozens of Azure Dragonhall's experts who had just escaped from death stopped. Damn it, where did these bastards get the news? How do we get ambushed instead? Even the deputy is dead. An Azure Dragonhall expert roared with a hoarse voice. Someone must have leaked it. Otherwise, the news wouldn't have leaked. If I find out who leaked the secret, I'll definitely make him die a horrible death. A strange look flashed in Yao Yifeng's eyes. He said in a deep and sorrowful voice, "Only the Hall Master and the Deputy Hall Masters know about this kind of secret operation. I think the possibility of them snitching is very low." Hall Master, Vice Hall Master. Hearing this, everyone fell silent. They trusted the Azure Dragonhall leader, but they had doubts about the Vice Hall leaders. After all, the Azure Dragonhall had lost too many people this time, which was equivalent to 1/7 of the Azure Dragonhall's total manpower. If this happened a few more times, the Azure Dragonhall would probably only exist in name. When I return this time, I will make a trip to the Heavenly Palace's headquarters and get the Elders' Assembly to send people to investigate the Azure Dragon Palace and find the mole, right? If we do not find out who the mole is, the people of the Azure Dragon Palace will not be at ease. Yichen stayed at the Murong family for a week. During this time, besides enjoying the world with Murong Qingsheng, he would occasionally spar with Murong Qingsheng, pointing out her weaknesses in battle. Because of his powerful soul power, Yichen could easily sense some of the details. He knew how to get the upper hand and suppress the opponent. In this aspect, no one could compete with him. Her profound sense martial arts had improved drastically, and Murong Qingsheng just happened to be lacking an opponent to train with. After 1 week, her battling power had increased steadily, and she might even be a bit more powerful than Bai Minghui now. If she were to rearrange the master-level warrior ranking, she would at least be in the top 20. During the spar with Murong Qingsheng, Yichen did not just sit around either. His main sword spell had already reached the 2nd level. With just a thought, he would be able to control his flying sword to kill his enemies. Within 300 steps, it would be no different from within 10 steps. Even Murong Qingsheng, who had an amazing speed talent, would have a hard time avoiding Yi Chen's flying sword. In terms of killing speed, it was twice as fast as the spiritual sword. After 1 week, Yi Chen had returned to the Yi family, while Murong Qingsheng had calmed down and started to create her own profound sense martial art. In the sky, a white satin-like light flashed past. It was as sharp as a sword, looking like an illusionary flying sword. The white light arrived in the sky above the Windy Nation. A small nation, a small family, and yet a rare sword art genius has been born. It is indeed not easy, but the tallest tree in the forest will be blown away by the wind. It is not a good thing for a young man to not know how to be reserved. Let me teach him a lesson. The white light paused for a second before increasing its speed again, flying toward the Misty Mountain. Misty Mountain Yi family. Yi Chen was teaching a disciple of the Yi family. This Yi family disciple was none other than Yi Xiaoshui, who had given Yi Chen the inspiration and helped him complete his gold pattern. Although Yi Xiaoshui's cultivation talent was ordinary, his sword art talent was quite good. Last time, the Sky Water Sword spell that Yi Chen had given him, he had already trained to the 6th movement. The first 5 movements were all 60 to 70% complete, and the 6th movement was also 50% complete. While watching Yi Xiaoshui practice, Yi Chen said, "Soft sword art can confuse the enemy, making them unable to see the sword's trajectory. But no matter if it is soft sword art or any other sword art, it should not be flashy without any substance. Your sword art is not bad, but it is still a bit superficial." The Sky Water Sword spell focuses on 3 words: softness, entanglement, and ruthlessness. You have achieved softness, but entanglement and ruthlessness are still a bit lacking. Entanglement requires you to use softness, and ruthlessness is the ultimate form, like a whirlpool devouring the enemy. Yi Xiaoshui regarded Yi Chen as a legend, so he listened very carefully and learned very seriously. He could feel that although his sword art did not improve substantially, he still had a high chance of winning against an opponent at the same level. This was the difference between sword art attainments and actual combat. Yi Chen's on-the-spot teaching could at least save him a lot of hard work. All right, that's enough. Yi Chen suddenly stopped Yi Xiaoshui and looked at the sky. In the sky, a beam of white light was flying straight over. The sharp sword qi resonated with the sky, as if it had become one with the sky. This person, Yi Xiaoshui, held his breath, and his skin felt cold. Master Sky Sword. Yi Chen did not need to guess to know who it was. Among the top swordsmen of the older generation, Master Sky Sword, Master Blood Sword, and Master Demon Sword were the most famous. These sword masters had different styles. Master Blood Sword's sword art was cruel and merciless, bloody and murderous. Master Demon Sword's sword art was strange and unpredictable. Master Sky Sword's sword art was even more amazing. It was like a great pressure, unstoppable. Without a doubt, this person was Master Sky Sword. The white light's speed was extremely fast, and it soon arrived in the sky above Yi Chen's courtyard. It was a white-haired old man. His clothes fluttered as he gently landed on the lakeside, standing beside a large tree. The white-haired old man sized up Yi Chen and was slightly surprised. He could see that Yi Chen carried a great momentum, and this momentum was different from his own. It was a kind of pressure that came from the unseen. Connecting this with the previous incident, the white-haired old man was sure that this was the other party's sword sect momentum. It has only been a few days, and he already has the sword sect momentum. The white-haired old man frowned slightly. A person's faith was very terrifying. Some bodhisattvas in temples were clearly inanimate objects, but after receiving a lot of worship, they could produce some strange things and gradually gain spirituality. Of course, this spirituality did not mean that it was omnipotent and could satisfy the wishes of the believers. It could only allow the sincere believers to have pure thoughts and not have any distracting thoughts. This was what was known as faith nourishment. The title of Sword Sect was the #1 title under Sword King. Since ancient times, It had been an incomparably glorious title. The significance it represented was very great. Accepting the title of Sword Sect would give one the Sword Sect momentum, and other swordsmen would be suppressed if they encountered it. Good, not bad. You are Yi Chun? The white-haired old man slowly exhaled, his eyes shining. Yi Chun nodded. You are Master Sky Sword, right? This old man is. Master Sky Sword cleared his throat and said, the title of Sword Sect has not been obtained by anyone for hundreds of years. Do you know why? Yi Chun knew some of the reasons, but he still said, I'd like to hear the details. Before entering life and death realm, Sword Sect is the ultimate glory of a sword artist. For hundreds of years, it's not that there hasn't been a number one sword artist. On the contrary, there have been them all the time. However, none of them dared to call themselves Sword Sect, because no sword artist could hold onto the title forever. Not being able to hold onto the title is a humiliation to the Sword Sect. Therefore, it's still too early for you to call yourself Sword Sect. I didn't inform anyone this time, and I don't want to bully the weak. How about this? Hand over the title of Sword Sect, and I won't make things difficult for you. Yi Chun smiled. My view is different from yours. The reason why there hasn't been a Sword Sect for hundreds of years is not because those people thought they couldn't hold on to the title, but because they lacked courage and responsibility. Without even this bit of courage, even if they had the strength, they wouldn't be worthy of being a Sword Sect. The so-called Sword Sect is both internal and external. One must have both strength and courage. Since they have strength and courage, why can't they be called Sword Sect? Master Sky Sword's eyes narrowed. Seems like words are useless. Since you think you have the strength, I'll have to wake you up. Please enlighten me. I'll make sure you return empty-handed. Yi Chun wasn't the slightest bit intimidated by the opponent's name. In his eyes, the opponent was only a powerful sword artist, and he was a Sword Sect. Hee, this is the first time I've seen such an arrogant youngster. Master Sky Sword laughed out of extreme anger. With a wave of his hand, several leaves suddenly flew out from a nearby tree. These leaves revolved around his palm, and with a flick of his wrist, the leaves flew out. As the saying went, even a flying flower or a plucked leaf could injure the enemy. Swish, swish, swish. These leaves were no longer ordinary leaves. Not only did they contain Master Sky Sword's formidable Zhen Yuan and sword intent, but they also contained a unique profound. Without any exaggeration, these leaves could instantly kill an ordinary master. Moreover, this was only Master Sky Sword's initial probing. Buzz. Yi Chun's body remained motionless. Suddenly, a golden ripple blossomed around his body, shattering the invading leaves. Chapter 664. Sky Sword Style White Flood Dragon. Master Sky Sword faintly creased his brows. The golden ripples emitting from Yi Chun's body gave him a misconception, as if the latter would pounce on him at any moment and brazenly attack. Raising his index and middle fingers, Master Sky Sword slashed in the air, and a white silk-like sword chi shot out. This sword chi extended and extended indefinitely, looking like a small white flood dragon shrouded in white light. Draw your sword. As he spoke, another golden ripple burst out from Yi Chun's body. The ripple was extremely powerful, and when the white flood dragon sword chi came into contact with it, it immediately created thousands of sparks. Then, its direction changed, bypassing Yi Chun's body and shooting into the center of the lake. Rumble. The lake undulated up and down, and shortly after, a water column hundreds of meters thick erupted, erupting thousands of meters into the sky. When it fell, the entire cloud mist mountain seemed to be raining. Looking at the lake again, the water level had dropped by dozens of meters, almost completely drained. Good. Worthy of being a sword prodigy that only appears once in 1,000 years. To be able to research such a strange, protective chi. How could Master Sky Sword not see that Yi Chun was using his body as a sword, releasing a move that was somewhere between offense and defense? This move not only had a powerful offensive power, but it also had a divergent effect. Any attack that approached would be weakened by 30%, and then pushed away by the divergent force, deviating from its direction. The path of the sword is like rowing a boat against the current. If you don't move forward, you will fall back. I am improving at every moment, so I dare to call myself Sword Master. Yichen stretched out his hand, and the rain in the sky suddenly converged, turning into a water dragon, pouring back into the lake, filling it up again. Hearing this, Master Sky Sword suddenly felt a little regretful. He didn't have any great enmity with Yi Chun, nor did he have any gratitude towards Yi Chun. This time, he had come here purely because he was dissatisfied that the title of Sword Master had been given to a young man. He could tolerate being forgotten by the world, but he couldn't tolerate the title of Sword Master being tarnished. In his eyes, the title of Sword Master was sacred, and it was precisely because of this that he couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of impurity. However, after exchanging blows with Yi Chun, he discovered that compared to the information he had obtained, Yi Chun was indeed much stronger. If he had known that Yi Chun's potential was so strong and was improving at every moment, he might have considered it. Of course, regardless of whether he regretted it or not, the arrow was already knocked on the bowstring, and it had to be released. As long as he could defeat Yi Chun, this trip would not be in vain. Clang! Grandmaster Heavenly Sword unsheathed his sword, and as soon as it was unsheathed, it brought with it a sharp, murderous aura as it attacked Yi Chun. As the sword slashed out, the space in front of it distorted, and the multicolored light made people feel as if they had entered an illusory realm. This is my residence. Let's go to the sky. Yi Chun didn't receive the attack. He bent his knees and turned into a flash of sword light as he soared into the sky, narrowly avoiding Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's attack. Pop! Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's sword chi was extremely condensed. Although its destructive power was great, its area of destruction was not wide, so it only left behind an unfathomably deep black hole at the lakeside. Seeing that Yi Chun had left, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword waved his sleeves, and a white light surged out. His body turned illusory and real, and he chased after Yi Chun like a white silk. Who? After the two of them left, Yi Xiaoshui, who was several hundred meters away, panted heavily as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Wiping off his cold sweat, he raised his head with a pale complexion and looked at the two people chasing after him in the sky. Too strong, 100 times stronger than me, 1,000 times stronger. Just a random wisp of their aura can make me feel like I'm close to death. If I can be 1/10 as strong as them in this life, my life will not be in vain. No, I might not be able to see a battle of this level in my lifetime. Even if I can't understand it, it can still broaden my horizons and improve my state of mind. I can't miss it. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword and Yi Chun had already disappeared into the eastern horizon. Yi Xiaoshui gritted his teeth and chased after them at full speed. After leaving the Yi family, he soared into the sky and doubled his speed. After a cup of tea's time, Yi Xiaoshui finally saw the figures of Yi Chun and Grandmaster Heavenly Sword in a small mountain range. At this time, this mountain range, which was used as a training ground for the Yi family's descendants, was already riddled with holes. Sword scars covered a large area, sharp and narrow, and the sword intent was still lingering. Because of the distance, Yi Xiaoshui couldn't even see the appearance and movements of the two clearly, but this was enough. In the sky above the mountain range, the two figures constantly clashed, and sparks flew everywhere. Sky sword style, sky cleaving. After another collision, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword used the momentum to fly above Yi Chun, and then he and his sword became one, slashing down. Before the sword arrived, the majestic and condensed sword pressure split the center of the mountain range in half, leaving a clear sword scar that was hundreds of meters deep. Extreme speed sword. Yi Chun almost couldn't catch the trajectory of this sword. Raising his center of gravity, Yi Chun raised his sword to meet the attack, using the spiritual sword. Dang! The two, one above and one below, their swords collided. Buzz! With the two as the center, circles of spatial ripples spread out, and the air became as viscous as mercury, incomparably heavy. Even time seemed to stop. Yi Xiaoshui, who was dozens of miles away, also felt that time had become much longer, and his thinking speed had decreased. Rumble. After the extreme silence, an earth-shattering explosion rang out, and the shockwave crazily swept out. The tall peaks in the mountain range were all blown off, and a layer of them was shaved off. All the demonic beasts were bleeding from the 7 apertures of their heads and died. Fortunately, there was usually no one here, or else it would have led to a tragedy. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword and Yi Chun separated upon contact, and both retreated. However, Yi Chun only retreated a few hundred steps before recovering, while Grandmaster Heavenly Sword kept retreating, unable to control his momentum. Thunder Devour. Withstanding the remaining shockwave, Yi Chun's body streaked across the sky like a sword light, and a sword carrying a silver thunderball smashed toward Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. A destructive aura filled the sky. Heavenly Sword style sword array. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's face was filled with shock. 18 Zhen Yuan long swords rushed out of his body, forming a sword array, and its power increased by several times as it faced Yi Chun. Kacha. The silver thunderball and the sword array collided, and the sky suddenly lost its color. Only silver lightning and sword chi could be seen flying everywhere, as if it was the end of the world. Such a huge commotion couldn't have gone unnoticed. From all directions, people could be seen rushing over from time to time. In the northwest were people from Yi family and South Ritter sect, and in other directions, there were also people from the pugilistic world. In a short period of time, all the people nearby had arrived. There were no less than 1,000 people, and it seemed like the situation was getting more and more intense. Xiao Shui, what's going on? Yi Tianhao and Shun Yuqing came together, and behind them was a large group of people from Yi family. There were Yi family elders, Yi family members, and Yi family disciples. There were at least 300 to 400 people. Yi Xiaoshui cupped his fists and said respectfully, "Family leader, mistress." Soon after, he told them everything he knew. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword, I've heard of him. He was one of the top sword artists 100 years ago. I didn't expect him to be the one fighting Chun Air. Yi Tianhao frowned. Will Chun Air be in danger? Shen Yuqing said worriedly. Yi Tianhao shook his head slightly. It seems like they are evenly matched. Moreover, doesn't Shen Air know the defensive sword art? He hasn't used it yet, so he should have some confidence in himself. Although Grandmaster Heavenly Sword shocked Yi Tianhao, he trusted Yi Chun, so Yi Tianhao didn't think there would be any problem. A martial artist's potential had a limit. Although Grandmaster Heavenly Sword was one of the top sword artists 100 years ago, without any fortuitous encounter, he would be stuck at this level for the rest of his life. The younger one was, the higher the cultivation base, the better. This way, it would be easier to break through one's original realm. After 100 years, there was basically no hope. Even stepping into half-step king realm was an extravagant hope. Otherwise, the number of kings on True Spirit Continent would increase by at least 10 times. That's true. Shen Yuqing let out a sigh of relief. They knew a thing or two about the defensive sword art. As far as they were concerned, it was simply a miraculous skill. Who's fighting Yi Chun? This person is so powerful. He can actually fight evenly with Yi Chun. Yi Chun is number 1 on the Master's ranking, titled Grandmaster Sword. The Master's ranking doesn't record experts above the age of 250. Could this person be over 250 years old? Could he be a famous sword artist in the past? There weren't many who recognized Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. They couldn't be blamed for being ignorant. The main reason was that Grandmaster Heavenly Sword had retired for a long time, and there weren't many who recognized him. Some well-informed people vaguely understood the cause and effect. This white-haired old man had certainly come for the title of Grandmaster Sword. Only the title of Grandmaster Sword could make these old monsters make a move. Yi Chun, I'm going all out. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword didn't intend to drag things out. Bring it on. Yi Chun prepared himself. Sky Sword style Star Beheading Sword. The Autumn Water Long Sword was raised high, and the sky above the mountain range suddenly darkened. One after another, flickering star phantoms appeared out of nowhere. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's white hair fluttered in the wind as he furiously slashed down. All the star phantoms shattered one after another, as if a single sword had shattered countless stars. Golden Hurricane. At the same time as the stars shattered, a golden ripple rapidly extended, as if a golden river had split the starry sky into two. Bang! The violent explosion caused the heaven and earth to shake and space to distort. The area where the two were standing turned fuzzy, and everything was stretched and distorted. The next moment, a resplendent radiance erupted like a star exploding, accompanied by golden specks. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword sucked in a deep breath and pushed his protective Zhen Yuan to the limit. His entire being was sent flying, and as he flew, golden specks would fall on his protective Zhen Yuan from time to time, producing countless sparks and loud clangs. Every time a loud clang rang out, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword's complexion would turn a shade paler. Each situation was more or less the same as Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. He had a half-step supreme grade defensive armor, and so did Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. The difference was that Grandmaster Heavenly Sword didn't have a Dragonbone defense, and so his blood and chi suffered some damage, causing his complexion to turn pale. On the other hand, Yichen was much more relaxed, and was only sent flying by the resplendent radiance. Grandmaster Heavenly Sword, if you stop here, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. While retreating, Yichen was still able to speak. After a few blinks of an eye, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword calmed his blood and replied, You and I are about the same. I can't defeat you, and you can't defeat me. He had no choice but to admit that he couldn't defeat Yichen with his strength, and this shocked him greatly. According to the information he had obtained, Yichen's strength hadn't been this strong during the battle with Dugaju. It had only been a few days, yet his strength had improved to a certain extent. I'm afraid not. As he spoke, Yichen pointed out with his left hand, and the emerald longsword at his waist automatically unsheathed. With a flicker of sword light, it instantly arrived before Grandmaster Heavenly Sword. Under his horrified gaze, the emerald longsword pierced through his protective Zhen Yuan and slashed at his armor. Puff! Spurting out blood, Grandmaster Heavenly Sword retreated once more, his eyes filled with fear. Chapter 665. What kind of sword art is this? Controlling a sword to kill the enemy? After all, not many people knew about the sword control art. In a small nation like Windy Nation, the number of people who knew about it was even fewer. Sword control art. With a slap of his palm, a mountain peak shattered. Master Sky's sword also seized this opportunity to stop his figure, his eyes rigidly staring at the flying sword in the sky. Not bad. Yichen indifferently said, Your sword control art has already been cultivated to the highest realm. As an older generation sword artist, Master Sky's sword couldn't possibly not know about the sword control art. The reason why this sword art was so famous was mainly because once it was cultivated, any ordinary sword artist could instantly become a peak sword artist. Therefore, it was highly revered and even deified. However, Master Sky's sword knew that although the sword control art was powerful, it could only make one a peak sword artist. It was impossible for one to be invincible. The defensive sword art also had its flaws, and that was it couldn't grow along with the growth of its master. Using the defensive sword art at early Sea of Soul Realm would have the same might as using it at mid-Sea of Soul Realm. It was closely related to soul power, and only with the growth of soul power could it grow. Therefore, even though Master Sky's sword knew that the defensive sword art had reappeared, he didn't care too much about it. At his level of strength, the defensive sword art couldn't possibly injure him. For him, it was merely a troublesome sword art, not much of a threat. However, at this moment, the sword control art was almost invincible in Yichen's hands. The frightening speed didn't give him any chance to block. He was certain that Yichen had cultivated the sword control art to the highest realm. Moreover, Yichen also had some talent in soul power. Otherwise, even if he cultivated it to the highest realm, he wouldn't be able to display such might. Hearing this, Yichen neither agreed nor disagreed. In the hands of others, The Imperial Sword technique was merely a shortcut to becoming a top-notch swordsman. Although it had great significance, it didn't solve the root of the problem, as it didn't have enough potential. But in his hands, it was a super killing move. Currently, he had merely cultivated the Imperial Sword technique to the second level, and it already had the power to heavily injure Master Heaven Sword. If he wanted to, he could easily take Master Heaven Sword's head. If he cultivated it to the highest level, the third level, even he himself didn't know how destructive it would be. Taking a deep breath, Master Sky Sword's eyes sharpened. I like to see how strong the so-called Imperial Sword technique is. Previously, when he was sent flying by the shockwave, his reaction was a little slow. In a situation where he was fully focused, he believed that he could block the flying sword. You can't stop it. Yi Chun pointed his finger in the air, and the emerald green longsword turned into an emerald green ray of light, flashed to the right side of Master Sky's sword, and fiercely stabbed. I saw it. Master Sky Sword found the trajectory of the sword and slashed at it. With a calm expression, Yi Chun tilted his finger. Clang! In the next moment, blazing sparks appeared behind Master Sky Sword's back. At the critical moment, Yi Chun controlled the flying sword, and, as if teleporting, he arrived behind Master Sky Sword. The latter didn't even have the time to turn around and was hit. Although the destructive sword chi was weakened by the protective Zhen Yuan, and a part of it was neutralized by the armor, some of the sword chi was still transmitted in a Master Sky Sword's body through the armor, causing him to bleed from all 7 apertures. I told you, you can't stop it. Yi Chun's defensive sword art was several times stronger than Sidhu Hao's. First of all, his soul power was 5 times that of an ordinary person. Not only could he control the flying sword more flexibly and freely, he could also raise the flying sword's speed to a terrifying level. Moreover, Yi Chun's sword intent was the destruction sword intent, and its power was equivalent to a peak 5th step ordinary sword intent. This wasn't something Sidhu Hao could compare with. With the two added together, Sidhu Hao's defensive sword art was nothing more than trash in front of Yi Chun. Taking a step back, even if Master Sky's sword could see the flying sword trajectory and block it in advance, it would still be useless because Yi Chun's flying sword's offensive power was too high. It was equivalent to a killing move, and Master Sky's sword wouldn't be able to block it more than a few times. After a few times, his blood and chi would start to shake violently. Even if his reaction could keep up, his body couldn't, and he would still lose. How could he be so powerful? Master Sky sword spurted blood as he was astonished. Yi Chun's defensive sword art had simply subverted his view of defensive sword arts. But, according to some ancient records, defensive sword arts weren't this powerful. Master Sky's sword, you're not my opponent. Whether you admit that I'm sword master or not, I'm stronger than you. There's no need to doubt this. Yi Chun's voice transmitted over. Slowly standing up, Master Sky's sword seemed to have aged 10 years. Youngster, I take back my previous words. You're indeed stronger than me, and you have the qualifications to become sword master. In the future, I won't make a fuss about this matter. I believe that no one on this continent can challenge your position as sword master. Yi Chun was still growing. As time passed, his position as sword master would inevitably become more and more stable. After exchanging blows with Yi Chun, Master Sky's sword clearly understood that there was no sword master below Half-Step King Realm who could defeat Yi Chun. I hope you're right. With a thought, the emerald longsword turned around and returned to its scabbard with a clang. This matter is settled. I won't disturb you any further. Master Sky sword smiled bitterly. With a wave of his sleeves, his figure flew back the way he came, disappearing into the horizon in a few moments. Yi Chun won. Seems like the title of Swordmaster is in the bag. Nonsense. Relying on defensive sword art alone, no one is Yi Chun's opponent. I didn't expect a sword master to appear in our tiny windy nation. It's been hundreds of years since a sword master has appeared on the continent. Sword Master. This is the ultimate title for sword artists under life and death realm. If the Sword King was the Emperor of Swords, then the Sword Master was the General of Swords, and all other sword artists were soldiers. After the battle, Yi Chun and the Yi family members returned to the Yi family. Those martial artists who were watching the battle also left one after another. Because of the excitement, these people found a nearby restaurant and drank while chatting, talking about the powerful martial artists in the world. As soon as Master Sky's sword left Windy Nation, he ran into an old rival, Master Bloodsword. Master Bloodsword wanted to ridicule Master Sky's sword, but he discovered that the latter's aura was dispirited, as if he had suffered a serious internal injury. He doubtfully asked, "Old Ghost Sky Sword, did you win against the Yi Chun?" In his opinion, Master Sky Sword had certainly won against Yi Chun. However, Yi Chun was too strong, and Master Sky Sword had also suffered a serious injury. Master Sky Sword had never been fond of Master Bloodsword, so he coldly said, "I lost." With that, his figure flickered, and he crossed paths with Master Bloodsword. Lost. Master Bloodsword had yet to recover from his shock. This old guy must be deceiving me. How could he lose? Fine, since I'm already here, I might as well see what tricks this Yi Chun has up his sleeve. A sneer appeared on Master Bloodsword's face as he sped toward Misty Mountain. Yi Clan, Yi Chun frowned. Hundreds of li away, a blood-colored light shot straight toward the Yi Clan. According to this aura, Yi Chun guessed that the other party was Master Bloodsword, who is equally famous as Master Sky Sword. Coming at me one by one is always troublesome. Yi Chun was no longer in the mood to fight with his opponent. Go! With a wave of his finger, the emerald green longsword flew out of its sheath. Master Bloodsword's speed was very fast. In a flash, he had traveled dozens of li. When he was less than 200 li away from the Yi clan, he suddenly became vigilant and slashed out with his sword. Clang! A flying sword instantly appeared in front of him, colliding with his longsword. The huge force made him stagger back 100 steps. Sword control art? Who is it? Master Bloodsword turned pale with fright. Master Bloodsword, leave now. You're not my match. Yi Chun's voice came from the flying sword. You're Yi Chun? Master Bloodsword was bewildered. Yes. You want to chase me away with a sword? Treating my Master Bloodsword as if I don't exist. Master Bloodsword was furious. If you don't want to leave, then leave lying down. Yi Chun didn't hold back at all. From 100 li away, he controlled his flying sword to attack Master Bloodsword. Although the huge distance had weakened his control, Yi Chun's soul power was 5 times that of ordinary people. It was still far beyond Situ Hao's, and his offensive power was even more unparalleled. Ding, 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 ding. Fortunately, Master Bloodsword could barely block it from 100 li away. But each time he blocked, his blood and chi would shake violently, making him dizzy and see illusions. Not good. Master Bloodsword was shocked. The long sword in his hand danced, creating a sword net. Break! The emerald long sword pierced through the net and slashed at Master Bloodsword's chest. Puff! Spurting out a mouthful of blood, Master Bloodsword was speechless. They were separated by more than 100 li. What realm had the opponent reached? Swish! The emerald long sword danced in the air and once again appeared in front of Master Bloodsword, thrusting out. Go! Master Bloodsword no longer had the courage to look for Yi Chun. He blocked the flying sword with his blood-colored longsword. After spurting out another mouthful of blood, he borrowed the momentum to fly backward like a huge bird. His body flashed, flying away at a speed even faster than when he had charged. This old man really didn't lie to me. Master Bloodsword was incomparably sullen. He had been scared away before even seeing the opponent. When had he ever been humiliated like this? Master Sky Sword suffered a loss, but I suffered a bigger one. How about I incite Master Demon Sword to challenge him and let him suffer a big loss as well? Master Bloodsword thought maliciously. After chasing away Master Bloodsword, the emerald longsword flew back to the Yi family and returned to Yi Chun's scabbard. There shouldn't be any trouble from now on. Slowly letting out a turbid breath, Yi Chun thought to himself. The news of Yi Chun defeating Master Sky Sword had been spread by word of mouth among the spectators. The speed of the news had been increasing day by day. Of course, no matter how fast the news spread by word of mouth, It couldn't be compared to the news spread by the pavilion. It should be known that every city had a pavilion. Although these shops didn't have transportation gates, the pavilion still had a tool that could transmit simple information. Therefore, in just 1 week, the news of Yi Chun defeating Master Sky Sword had spread throughout the Sky Martial region, making everyone who was waiting to see the pavilion and Yi Chun become a laughingstock. They couldn't believe their ears. Master Sky Sword, who had been a top sword artist for hundreds of years, had actually been defeated by Yi Chun. It was too shocking. In this world, which sword artist could beat Yi Chun? The title of Master Sky Sword had already been fixed and could not be changed. Unfortunately, no one knew that Yi Chun had scared away Blood Sword Master from 100 li away. Blood Sword Master wouldn't be so bored as to spread this sullen matter. Otherwise, the whole Sky Martial region would be in an even greater uproar. Chapter 666. In any case, whenever Sword Master was mentioned in Sky Martial region, it would be Yi Chun and no one else. As for the entire True Spirit Continent, it would still take some time to spread. After all, True Spirit Continent was simply too vast. It would take half a year for the news to spread across the continent. It would take even longer for everyone to know. Yi Chun was the first genius to obtain the title of Sword Master in several hundred years. Just this one stroke was enough to enter the annals of history. In the pavilion at the center of the lake, a man and a woman were drinking tea and chatting. The man was Yi Chun, and the woman was Long Bai. Sect Leader Long, what's the current situation of Dragon God, Celestial Palace? Yi Chun was rather concerned about Dragon God, Celestial Palace. Long Bai said, I'm a dozen years older than you. Call me Senior Sister Long. Shortly after, she said in a deep voice, Dragon God Celestial Palace's current situation is very bad. Some time ago, Azure Dragon Hall's deputy Huan Hai and his several hundred subordinates were ambushed. They were almost completely wiped out. Only a dozen or so people managed to escape, while Huan Hai perished. So many losses? Yi Chun was flabbergasted. Long Bai faintly nodded. Those who survived believe that there's a traitor. Currently, the people of Azure Dragon Hall are restless. Hall leader and the deputy's prestige has dropped somewhat. Elder Association has already sent people to investigate, but the results are unknown for the time being. So that's the case. How did those dozen or so people survive? Yi Chun's intuition was extremely sharp, and he could see some problems. Long Bai said, I also feel strange. Right? Yellow Dragon Hall's former deputy Yao Yifeng is among them. He's one of the survivors. Yao Yifeng? Yi Chun's brows creased. Is there something wrong with him? It shouldn't be too likely. There's a special restriction on his body, so it's not likely for him to rebel. Moreover, he didn't know the details of the operation beforehand. Only Azure Dragon Hall's leader and a few deputies knew. Therefore, the problem is very serious. If the traitor is really a deputy or even a hall leader, it will bring a frightening consequence to our Dragon God Celestial Palace. Long Bai's heart was heavy. Yi Chun turned silent. Indeed, if the traitor was Azure Dragon Hall leader or one of the deputy hall leaders, the impact would not be small. The entire Dragon God Celestial Palace would be thrown into turmoil. After all, Azure Dragon Hall was the head of the 5 great halls. If there was a traitor among the upper echelons, the other halls would most likely become restless and distrust the higher echelons. Once the subordinates did not trust the higher echelons, it would be troublesome. Senior Sister Long, tell the higher-ups of Dragon God Celestial Palace that if they need me, Yi Chun, just say. Yi Chun himself was clear that he couldn't change the big picture by himself, but he was confident that he could play a big role in a small-scale battle. It's good that you have this intention. However, the war between the 5th-rank sects is very dangerous. If you get ambushed or surrounded, the chances of dying are quite high. In fact, Long Bai did not approve of Yi Chun going there. He still had a lot of potential, and there was hope for him to enter the life and death realm in the future. And a life and death king was far more important than an entire war. I know, but I still want to help Dragon God Celestial Palace. Yi Chun was already on the same boat with Dragon God Celestial Palace. Whether it was for Dragon God's celestial palace or himself, he couldn't cower. All right, I'll tell you. Long Bai rejoiced that she had taken a fancy to Yi Chen back then. This youngster was even more outstanding than she had imagined. Potential, talent, and character were all top-notch. In the whole world, there weren't many like him. While the two were chatting in the eastern shallow ocean, in the Dragon God's celestial palace's Elder Hall, the sounds of argument never stopped. In my opinion, we should place restrictions on the Azure Dragon Palace's vice palace masters, just like Yao Yifeng. A stout, black-haired old man exuding a heavy killing chi said from the fifth seat of the elder's table. As soon as these words were spoken, the old man opposite him immediately shook his head. No, not to mention the possibility of them being traitors. Even if they're traitors, we can't do this. Once we do it, the hearts of the people will become even more unstable. It's tantamount to telling others that our elder council is suspecting them. The consequences will be unimaginable. There's no need to announce it. Do it in secret. That won't do either. If they aren't traitors and are completely loyal to our Dragon God Celestial Palace, wouldn't doing this chill their hearts? If they don't have any rebellious thoughts, we'll force them out. Then what do you think we should do? The opposing old man smiled bitterly. Isn't everyone trying to think of a solution? I believe there must be a solution. Sai, by the time we think of a solution, our Dragon God Celestial Palace will lose a lot of people. The tall and sturdy old man said angrily. Cough, cough. Sitting on the main seat was a white-haired old man. He was a core member of the Dragon God Celestial Palace, a person of virtue and prestige. He had held the position of Great Elder for more than 100 years, and his strength was unfathomable. He cleared his throat and said, "This time, we're discussing two topics. First, how to deal with the traitor problem, and second, how to reverse the disadvantageous situation facing the four hostile forces. Since we don't have any clues about the traitor problem, let's discuss the second one first." Hearing these words, an elder sitting at the end of the table said, "Great Elder, in my opinion, we should dispatch people from the headquarters to support Azure Dragon Hall and Black Dragon Hall. Right, our Dragon God Celestial Palace has 3 great secret forces. As long as we dispatch one, we can deal with the problem and catch the 4 hostile forces unprepared." The elder beside him agreed. "I don't think it's appropriate. The most important thing right now is to wait for sect leader to come out. Before that, it's best not to provoke the 4 hostile forces too much. If we dispatch the secret forces, the hostile forces will certainly dispatch their own. This is tantamount to expanding the scale of the war ahead of time, which will only bring more harm than good." The similarly virtuous and prestige second elder vetoed. Second elder is right. This suggestion cannot be accepted. Third elder said. At this moment, an elder suddenly said, "I have a method that satisfies both sides." "Oh, what method?" Everybody's attention was drawn. This elder was the 18th elder. He said with a beaming smile, "I don't know if you've heard the news, but the first sword master in several hundred years has appeared on True Spirit Continent. We all know this person. He's Yi Chen." "Yi Chen, sword master? Not possible, right? It's only been a few years." "Yeah, 18th elder. You didn't hear wrong, did you?" Hearing these words, the 18th elder didn't argue and took out a book from his storage ring. On the cover of the book, there were 3 big words, Master Ranking. This is the second master ranking of True Spirit Continent. Take a look and you'll understand. As he spoke, the 18th elder handed over the ranking to the person beside him. The person beside him flipped to the first page, and his eyes immediately widened. First master ranking, Yi Chen Sword Master. "It's true. Let me take a look," the other elders urged. Soon, the ranking turned around and landed in the hands of the 18th elder. The 18th elder said, "Now you believe me, right? This is indeed true. But, 18th elder, don't forget that individual strength is not that important in a sect war. Moreover, he has a lot of potential. We can't let him take the risk. If we lose a martial genius who has the potential to enter the life and death realm, it will be more painful than losing thousands of experts." The 18th elder said, "Once an individual's strength reaches a certain level, it will actually be very useful. He alone is equivalent to a small group of Sea of Soul realm experts. As long as he is not surrounded, he will basically be unstoppable. As for a large-scale war, the four opposing parties have a lot of people, and our Dragon God Celestial Palace has a lot of people as well. Even if it doesn't work out, some of us will be able to escape. Of course, the most important thing is that White Dragon Hall's leader Mo Feng mentioned that Yi Chun has the intention to come. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought him up. Everybody was a bit hesitant as they looked at the head elder. The head elder didn't look at them and said to the 18th elder, "You said it's the best of both worlds. What about the other one?" The 18th elder said, "Azure Dragon Hall has lost a deputy who went high. Let's let Yi Chun take his place. Moreover, with Yi Chun in the Azure Dragon Hall, there might be some unexpected gains, such as finding a spy." Faintly nodding, the head elder said, "How about this? 18th elder, you go to Windy Nation and have a chat with Yi Chun. Listen to his opinion, but don't force him. It would be best if you could dissuade him. If he insists, I'll talk to the two protectors." The affairs of the Dragon God Celestial Palace were usually handled by the Elders Association. Above them were the left and right protectors, who had the same status as the head elder. Usually, when there was an important decision, the head elder would have to discuss it with the four protectors. "Yes, head elder." The 18th elder nodded. "All right, dismissed." The head elder stood up and left. After cultivating the defensive sword art to the second layer, it would be impossible for him to improve it in a short time. As for profound martial skills, apart from Golden Hurricane, all of them were already at perfection. However, Golden Hurricane needed to fuse water profound and metal profound, which was extremely difficult. Ichen didn't have much of a clue for the time being. However, there was always an exception. On this day, while Yi Chun was practicing his killing move, Thunder Devour, he suddenly heard a roar in his head. A silver thunderball shot out with a world-destroying might, flattening a small mountain near the Yi family. It might was more than twice as powerful as usual. This is fifth-step destruction, sword spirit. Yi Chun sucked in a deep breath and sank his consciousness into his sea of soul. Inside his sea of soul, the destruction sword spirit had grown a lot, emitting a black radiance all over its body. This radiance was like a black hole that seemed capable of devouring souls. On the other hand, the slaughter sword spirit had shrunk a lot, and its color was a bit dimmer than before. When the destruction sword spirit was formed, it had already started absorbing the power of the slaughter sword spirit. Although it was very small, it was still growing. Yi Chun originally thought that this process would take a long time. After all, the slaughter sword spirit's grade was the same as the destruction sword spirit's. Absorbing its power would not be easy. However, the current situation was without a doubt that the destruction sword spirit had absorbed enough power from the slaughter sword spirit, reaching the fifth step from peak fourth step. Its might was equivalent to an ordinary sixth-step sword spirit. The difference between peak fifth step and sixth step was like the difference between a half-step king and a life and death king. It was extremely frightening. After absorbing the majority of its power, the slaughter sword spirit had fallen from peak fourth step to third step, which was a whole step and a half. Its might have been greatly reduced, and the remaining slaughter sword spirit might not be enough to upgrade the destruction sword spirit to the sixth step. Being able to upgrade it to peak fifth step would already be quite good.